Hey folks, it's Cody Stoffer with Playmakers Corner, here to tell you about Code Red coaching. Competing in athletics means you've lifted the weights, you've watched film, and you've got the passion. Problem is, that's what everyone else in the state has done. Perfect your game by honing in on your mental performance with Code Red coaching. Whether you are a team or an individual, Code Red coaching has the tools to create mentally solid habits and set up you or your team for success. Find Code Red Coaching at coderedcoaching.com or call 720-979-1914 to learn more today. That's coderedcoaching.com or 720-979-1914 today. Now back to the show.
What is good, y'all? This is Gino with the Playmakers Corner podcast, and I'm very excited to give you all a recap of Week 3 in the 1A classification here for the 2024 Colorado High School football season. We had games on Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, including one matchup between two top 5 teams in our rankings. So let's not waste any more time and go ahead and jump right into this recap here. Starting off on Thursday, September 12th, where we had Prospect Ridge get their first win of the year and only their second win in the last 3 seasons over Jefferson by a score of 24-22. For Prospect Ridge here, sorry if I mispronounced this name, but Macon Puga led Prospect Ridge on offense and defense here with 102 yards and all 3 of the team's touchdowns on 16 carries, and then defensively he also added an absurd 5 sacks in that game. Definitely a Playmaker of the Week worthy performance from Puga. Also on defense, the freshman Chase Rice had a team-leading 10 tackles, and then Gabriel Quintana Hinojos had an interception. And then for Jefferson here, Demetrius Hernandez struggled a bit passing the ball, throwing for 3 picks, but he rushed for 166 yards and a touchdown on 13 carries. And then also for Jefferson here, you had Giano Gomez, who rushed for 2 touchdowns as well. Moving on to the Friday games now. Starting us off here, we have Cedar Ridge, who put up a 50 ball on a center with a 52-12 win there. No stats in that game, so let's go ahead and check out the next game here, where 10-ranked Burlington traveled all the way to Kansas to play Goodland, but they got sent home sad in a 47-6 loss. No stats there in that game, but that's probably for the best. So let's go ahead and talk about this next game here, where we have the number 1 ranked Ray, who threw and ran all over Scott in a 42-14 win on Friday. For Ray, it was Casey Midcap, who keeps his MVP campaign rolling here after going 16 for 22 through the air for 216 yards and 2 touchdowns and no picks, while also adding 87 yards and a touchdown on 15 carries on the ground. He was not done there, though, believe it or not, as he also put up 11 tackles, an interception, and a tackle for loss on defense. But wait, folks, there is more, as he also had a 96-yard kick return touchdown. I'm not sure if there's any player in the state that is doing as much for his team as Casey Midcap is for Ray. But moving on now, we got also on offense here for Ray, we have Samuel Meisner, who rushed for 50 yards and a touchdown. Austin Collins with 7 receptions for 62 yards and a touchdown. And then he also had a rushing touchdown as well. And then you also had Aaron Tina, who caught 7 passes for a team-leading 86 yards and a touchdown. And then he also added an interception on defense. So just a lot of players who contributed on both sides here for Ray in that win. Next here we have Meeker, who got their first win of the season after their 25-12 win over Gunnison. For Meeker, it was the sophomore QB Cade Mills who led the way here with 3 touchdowns and 68 yards on 12 carries. And then you also had Cade Blunt racking up 117 yards on 26 carries and 10 tackles on defense as well for Blunt. And then you also had Clay Crawford with 89 yards and a touchdown on 8 carries. And then on defense, we have Tristan Rollins, who led the way with 12 tackles, a tackle for loss, and a forced fumble here. And then on defense as well for Meeker, Tyler Sanders had an interception. In our next Friday game, 9-ranked Monte Vista got a statement win over North Fork, 43-20. For Monte Vista, it was Jacob Pacheco who was the catalyst on offense, putting up 194 yards and 2 touchdowns on 17 carries, plus an interception on defense. Alex Marquez also rushed for 2 touchdowns here for Monte Vista and 80 yards on 10 carries, plus he also had 13 tackles and a sack on defense. And then another big-time two-way performance here for Monte Vista as Azariah Hurtado caught a touchdown pass, and he also had 13 tackles, 2 interceptions, and a tackle for loss on defense. Absolutely monstrous game from those 3 for that big-time win here. And then for North Fork, we just had Derek Syverson. Sorry if I mispronounced that one. He rushed for 138 yards and a touchdown on 27 carries. Let's go ahead and talk about this next game here where Wiggins shuts out the 6th-ranked Highland 14-0. Very nice win for Wiggins here as Jason Lausberg rushed for 202 yards and a touchdown on 22 carries here for Wiggins. And then Jorge Mendez rushed for another touchdown while also adding 10 tackles and 2 sacks on defense. Also on defense here for Wiggins, J.R. Meyer had 10 tackles, Tyler Dilka had 2 sacks, and Michael Pacheco, Eli Callis both had a sack as well. But the Wiggins defense was not done there, though, as Michael Adamson and Gavin Graham both had an interception in this shutout win over Highland. We got a close game here in our next game as Holyoke falls 27-21 at home against Colby, and that is a school from Kansas. No stats in that game, but that is definitely a tough loss for Holyoke, who is looking to enter our rankings this week. But hey, maybe next week or the week after that. Moving on now, we have a cross-classification game as the 8th-ranked Colorado Springs Christian lost a close one to 2A Woodland Park 28-25. The only stats we got for Colorado Springs Christian is that Joe Salmons racked up 8 tackles and 2 tackles for loss. If you want to check out the Woodland Park stats, go ahead and listen to the 2A recap, which should be coming up here shortly. Next game here, we only got a couple Friday games left. We have Grand Valley, who got shut out by 2A Coleridge 43-0. On defense here for Grand Valley, Preston Johnston led the team with 12 tackles, and then Gabriel Mendoza racked up 11 tackles and a tackle for loss. So let's talk about this next game as the 7th-ranked Peyton got blown out by Flatirons Academy at home 44-8. No stats here for Flatirons Academy in their big win. But for Peyton, the QB Noah Martin had a rough game throwing the ball, but he had a solid game on the ground as he put up 98 yards and a touchdown on 6 carries. Then you also had the sophomore Josiah Zimmerman dominated on defense with 17 tackles, 4 tackles for loss, and then he also contributed on offense with 3 receptions for 50 yards. Also here for Peyton, we have Richard Cole, who had a sack and 2 tackles for loss, and then Hunter Trim had 12 tackles. In our second to last of the Friday games, we have a battle of 2 top 5 teams where 3-ranked Centauri pulled out the win over the 4-ranked Buena Vista, 19-13. Very, very close game. And we didn't get any stats here for Centauri, unfortunately, in that big-time win. But for Buena Vista, Eli Shuknecht ran for 106 yards and a touchdown on 15 carries. And then on defense, he also added 6 tackles and a tackle for loss. And you also had Trey Cardwell, who added 75 yards and a touchdown on 4 carries. On defense here for Buena Vista, Bryson Flavin led the team with 16 tackles and a tackle for loss. Knox Reed had 14 tackles and a tackle for loss. And then Carter Stromer had 13 tackles and 2 tackles for loss. Coming up next, we have Platte Valley, who lost badly on the road to Eaton, 35-7. That is definitely a tough game on the road there against a very, very good Eaton team. In our last of the Friday games, though, we have the 5-ranked Forge Christian, who continues to dominate with a 48-7 win over Devlin. The QB, Sullivan Strange, went 6 for 12 for 141 yards, 2 touchdowns, and a pick, and then 27 yards and a touchdown on 7 carries. And then he also added a pick on defense as well. So big-time all-around game here from Strange. That wasn't the only big-time all-around performance, as we had Yuli Tafoya, who dominated with 126 yards, 2 touchdowns on 12 carries. He also added a 10-yard receiving touchdown. And then he wasn't done there, folks. He also put up 2 sacks on defense. So Tafoya and Strange doing it on both sides here for Forge Christian. And then speaking of receptions, you had Joey Shelton, who had 76 yards and a touchdown on 2 receptions. And then on defense here, you had Dante Vigil, who racked up a team-leading 15 tackles, and he also put up 44 yards and a touchdown on 8 carries offensively. So that will do it here for the Friday games. Let's go ahead and talk about these last 5 Saturday games. And folks, none of these have stats, so we're just going to breeze through these and talk about the scores. First game here, Manual falls 36-8 on the road to 2-8 Denver West. After that, you had Roaring Fork, who won over Del Norte via forfeit. Platte Canyon beat Ellicott 26-20 at home. Denver Christian got smacked by the top-seeded 2A Kent Denver 42-6. And then lastly, folks, the Pinnacle got their first win of the year, 16-3 over Mitchell. And that, folks, will do it here in the Week 3 recap for the 1A classification. This is Gino with the Playmakers Corner podcast, and I want to thank you all for listening, and I will see you all in Week 4. Peace out.
Thank you, Gino, for that recap of the 1A classification here. And now I'm going to take us through the 2A action in boys Colorado tackle football here. Starting off Thursday, not a lot of very interesting storylines here. Academy runs away from Alameda 43-0, headlined by quarterback Jace Farmer, who throws 1 and runs for 3 scores and 114 yards in the win. And then that was followed up by a 2A loss. Alamosa struggling, losing to Pueblo Central 43-0, and weren't able to eclipse 200 offensive yards. And Lincoln kept up the 2A struggles to bring home Thursday night with a 60-point loss to Kennedy to wrap up Thursday. To start off Friday, Gunnison dropped to 0-3 after Meeker ran for over 300 yards and would lose 25-12. Bayfield, on the other hand, almost scored 70 over Gallup from New Mexico, with 6 different players running for a touchdown in the win. Fort Lupton hopped back into the win column after Galicia here ran for over 100 yards and a pair of scores in a big win over Valley 41-14. Aspen narrowly lost to Steamboat Springs here, 24-22 here. Dylan Mika for Aspen ran for 131 yards and caught and ran for a score in the losing effort, but the squad could just not quite overcome Carter Coleman's 3 interceptions that he tossed in this loss. Eaton rolled to a 35-7 win over Platte Valley, headlined by Austin Edelman, who had 3 tackles for loss to stick out on defense, while Dylan Paris got 2 turnovers himself with a pick and a fumble recovery to complement an offense that was perfectly balanced with 189 yards passing and rushing in this big win. Inglewood got a hat trick of touchdowns from Deion Robinson and Logan Mayle here to run away 63-0 over Littleton. Delta continues to widen the gap over Rifle with an almost 50-point win over Rifle, where Ty Reed notched 2 interceptions, 3 passing touchdowns, and a rushing touchdown, and Landon Horn, one of the bigger plays of the game, an 85-yard pick 6 in Delta's win. Junior Dylan Miller threw 5 touchdowns and 224 yards in Cole Ridge's 43-0 win over Grand Valley. There was also J.L. Houston, who had 6 receptions, 3 scores, and 101 yards, where half of his catches were for a touchdown. And the defense for Coleridge swarmed for 9.5 TFLs and 3 interceptions in the big win. Basalt bludgeoned Glenwood Springs 35-7, headlined by Will Daniel, not only getting 124 yards and a trio of scores on offense, but also an insane 21 tackles on defense, outperforming big-name Markovich on both sides of the ball in this Longhorn win. As alluded to earlier by Gino, Woodland Park survives a 3-point scare from CSCS 28-25. This was headlined by Marquez Joseph Schoenberger here, who threw 1 touchdown and ran for 2 more with 248 total yards in a huge performance to leave with a 3-point win over a very solid CSCS team down in Southern Colorado. Strasburg keeps rolling here in 2A, winning 46-14 over La Junta. Aiden Dodge here, 22 carries, 129 yards, 2 rushing touchdowns, and a 99-yard kickoff return for a touchdown in this win. He was also joined in the scoring category by Brody Hopwood and Cade Hemphill, who both had a rushing touchdown. And then Cade actually caught 2 more touchdowns from Brody to help in this massive win. The Rolling Thunder of Lamar rolled through Bennett 43-16. Bennett only could run for just 3.4 yards per carry. Austin Steers here scoring their lone 2 touchdowns in this loss. And for Lamar, I would say that sophomore Jacob Dunning is what really sticks out here, throwing 4 touchdowns here, with 2 touchdowns apiece being caught by Cale Buxton and Diego Estrada. Salida overcame a 9-point deficit at the end of the first quarter to come back and win with 22 unanswered points to declare victory 28-15 over Florence. Ben Hunsberger of Florence was big to that early lead, running for 115 yards on the night for Florence. They also got a big 84-yard passing completion that would go for that other score. Now, on the other hand here, sophomore Kaysen Pridemore, putting in a candidacy for Playmaker of the Week, ran for 125 yards while also recording 10 tackles, a forced fumble, and a fumble recovery on defense. Now, speaking of Playmaker of the Week candidacy here, Andrew Brown of TCA throws in his hat, throwing for over 200 yards and a score, along with 91 rushing yards and 3 rushing scores over another top team as TCA overwhelms at home, beating Elizabeth 35-20. No stats were input for Elizabeth. That would be consistent with Sterling here, but Sterling would actually be on the winning end here, winning 34-12 over Banning Lewis Academy. The Stallions got a 2-touchdown performance from sophomore Sam Early, but still cannot really get this rushing attack going. Res Christian loses 20-6 to Palisade, and it's really starting to aggravate me trying to cover this team that never has any stats or any score recap. I literally cannot care about Res Christian. Figure it out. Figure it out. Whew, I got a little spicy there. But to close off Friday action, Devlin got steamed 48-7 by Forge Christian. On to the next tier to start off Saturday. The Cowboys of Denver West started off by beating Manual 36-8 via a 138 rushing yard performance from Jose Valencia here. Quarterback Marcelo Ortiz didn't pass a lot, but went 4 for 6 for 122 yards and 2 scores in the dub. And the defense recorded 12 tackles for loss, headlined by Joshua Montoya, who had 3 of his own. And they also had 4 total interceptions, courtesy of Robert Whitkey here, Ernest Fields, King Stansel, and Zion Snooty. Now the Spartans of Berthoud shut out Weld Central 26-0 in a win. Marcelo Rossi was kind of the only sign of life from Weld Central, rushing for 84 yards in the losing effort. But for Berthoud, Elisha Mosher, Cole Bielek, Ethan Hoffmeister, and Benjamin Schroeder all had at least 2 TFLs in the shutout effort for Berthoud. Kent Denver does what they're supposed to do. Wyatt Walker leading the way with 157 yards in a big win. And then Mitchell lost 16-3 to Pinnacle to close this week of 2A football. Not a lot of really good games, honestly, on the 2A level for this week. But we are looking forward to hopefully that evening out in the next week. Up next, we got some game recaps for you.
Hey everyone, this is Phoenix Barons with Playmakers Corner, here to give the rundown of the Friday night matchup between 3A teams, Thompson Valley Eagles at the Timnath Cubs. I got the privilege to be able to do media coverage for this game, and it did not disappoint. My first time at Timnath for a high school football game, and it was an absolutely gorgeous day for some good old Friday night lights. The game kicked off with Timnath kicking off to Thompson Valley to start off the game. After a 3-and-out by the Eagles, it was Timnath's turn, but only after one first down was created on a pass from Kyle Nelson to Jackson Barker, they were forced to punt it away. It remained a stalemate between both teams throughout this first quarter, with both teams tied at 0. Thompson Valley had their second drive continue on into the second quarter thanks in part to a neutral zone infraction drawn on a hard count by the Eagles when they set up on 4th down. And they were moving the ball well, with Garrick Henderson leading the charge for the Eagles, finding Wes Babo and Joseph Uratia for some solid throws and finally getting it on the ground with Hendrickson for the first score of the game. Thompson Valley led with 7-0 with the PAT good from Elijah Metzger. Timnath got the ball back, only for it to end in a quick 3-and-out, forcing them to punt it back to Thompson Valley. It had almost looked as if Thompson Valley were going to have a 3-and-out until they brought the offense back out again on 4th down and once again had drawn another neutral zone infraction by Timnath to continue their drive. It didn't end fruitfully as their last drive, as the field goal attempt by Metzger from the 23-yard line was no good, with Timnath taking over on downs. But the offensive struggles continued with the Cubs as another 3-and-out forced a punt back to Thompson Valley. Thompson Valley went back to work on offense with only so much time left in the second quarter. Garrick Henderson made a big throw to CJ James for 17 yards, but had a pass almost intercepted by Timnath's Jack Naxted that slowed them down. Thompson Valley had Hendrickson run the ball that was then fumbled, but luckily recovered by the offense and getting a timeout with 8 seconds left in the quarter. Hendrickson tried to get a deep throw to Uratia in the end zone and was incomplete. With a couple seconds left, Elijah Metzger tried again with a field goal, this time from the 21, and was good, giving the Eagles a 10-0 lead as they went into halftime. To start off the second half, it was Thompson Valley kicking off to Timnath that resulted in a touchback. The Cubs were back on offense, but the struggle had continued on into the second half as they were unable to move the ball on the ground, with tough incompletions continuing, leading to yet another 3-and-out for the Cubs. On the punt, it was Garrett Henderson back for the return, and he took it all the way to the house, dodging and weaving defenders and towing the sideline. It was a very good punt return, I will have to say, but was unfortunately called back on a block in the back call that set them back, taking away the 6 points and setting them back way further back. And it really hurt the Eagles and their momentum as they had themselves a 3-and-out with Hendrickson again almost throwing an interception to Timnath's Max Kolchak that would force them to punt it away. Timnath, however, couldn't take advantage as they had yet another 3-and-out. The offensive struggles were really tough for this Cubs team, and it was forcing them to put it back to Thompson Valley. Timnath's defense was holding firm in the third quarter, however, understanding the daunting task at hand. They were down big, and Hendrickson teasing them with a few dropped interceptions already. They finally were able to get one as Ivan Hochhalter finally gave the Cubs some much needed momentum with an interception that set them up in Eagle territory. They were now starting relatively close to the red zone with a good run by Mitchell DeAngelis to get them closer to the goal line. Thompson Valley, though, were impressive on defense all game as well, and they were not going to make it easy for the Cubs to score a touchdown, with Kyle Nelson throwing it up to Carter Gaines, but broken up in the end zone by Joseph Uratia on coverage. Now, Carter Gaines stands at 6'3", and compared to Joseph Uratia, who stood at 5'7", this should have been an easy matchup. And Gaines had a great jump at the ball, but the coverage by Uratia was absolutely elite, and his scrappiness more than made up for the small frame, able to force a field goal attempt from Timnath with the Cubs kicker Alex Kolchak from the 19-yard line, and was good, cutting the lead and finally putting some points on the board for the Timnath Cubs, 10-3. Thompson Valley got the ball back, but their 3 runs were just short of the first and forced a punt to Timnath. Kyle Nelson started off the drive with a throw to Darian Shaw that was met with a big hit by CJ James of Thompson Valley. I was on the Thompson Valley sideline for that second half, and after that hit, it looked like it hurt CJ James more than it did Darian Shaw, because afterwards he rushed to that sideline really quick to grab some air as he possibly took a shot in the no man's zone, as we like to call it, after getting the big tackle. And the Timnath was able to move the ball well in his absence as the drive went through a quarter change and with completions to Carter Gaines and Tanner Mock for first downs, but costly incompletions as they were in Thompson Valley territory led to a field goal attempt by Alex Kolchak. He had made one earlier. He was going to try this one from 35 yards, and he has a great leg. Don't get me wrong, able to get touchbacks on all the kickoffs today, but it was still no good as Thompson Valley took over from downs. Both teams had 3 and outs on following drives, and once Thompson Valley got the ball back one more time, they made it count as they drove down and got another rushing touchdown by Garrick Henderson, set up with the multiple big runs from Wes Bebo. Thompson Valley led 17-3. And the following drive by Timnath put a lot of pressure on the offense to come up with something, and quick. They had a little bit of time left and only so many points to pick up, but it was a little too quick as Nelson of Timnath forced a throw in Joseph Uratia's direction that resulted in a pick 6, extending the lead to 24-3, practically icing this game, the dagger in the back. The game was practically over with just a couple minutes left in the game. It wasn't until the final drive on the final seconds of the game that Timnath would finally get a touchdown with a 44-yard touchdown run from Mitchell DeAngelis to set the final score at 24-9. It was a great game, and for my post-game interview, I was able to grab Joseph Uratia as my defensive player of the game and Garrick Henderson for offensive player of the game. But Garrett also had brought along his offensive line, giving them the credit for being able to deliver in a big way on the ground, as I also got statements from Dane Gray, Seth Castle, Blake Chlobone, Keenan Parks, and Josiah Manu of Thompson Valley.
All right, so Joseph, first of all, great game. You played extremely well. You had really good lockdown defense as well as that pick 6. How do you be able to lock down so well despite your short stature compared to the tall receivers Timnath had?
You know, first of all, I got to thank my line for getting back there, pressuring that QB, because without them, he would just be throwing long balls free. But I guess it's just the grit. Yeah.
What's next for you in terms of your development? What's next for you? What's your next goal?
My next goal is move on to this next game, work as a team, just get better.
All right, I'm here with
Garrett Hendrickson.
Okay, so first of all, great game. You played phenomenally well. You're very, very shifty out there. What do you credit that? Do you think that's naturally born shiftiness, or did you train to get to that level?
I don't know. I've always been kind of small, so I kind of have to be. And I mean, I would never be shifty if I wasn't able to get in open field, and because of these guys. So, I mean, I credit all them. It's all credit to them.
Yeah, you brought over the offensive line. That you guys did an amazing job running the ball and getting those 2 touchdowns. O-line, how do you guys feel after that game? Are you proud of that run game?
For the most part, yeah. I like how we went.
I think we broke their spirit after the second half. You know, we came out, we wanted to hit them. We wanted some of these face masks being broken, so we came out, did what we could.
Yep. Right, I think in the beginning we were kind of slow, but I think at the end we definitely stepped it up a little bit.
Y'all guys play Loveland next week. How are y'all feeling after that, especially with a 3-0 start?
I'm feeling really good. I'm feeling confident that we can go in with heavy heads and just go at it.
I think it's going to take a lot of work. I don't think it's going to be easy, but I think we can definitely do it. We got the guys, we got the line, we got the players. So
yeah, they're going to have it out for us beating them last year, so going full head steam is going to be great.
Yeah, I think we're all ready, honestly. We're going to have a good week in practice, keep our heads down, keep our heads humble, work.
Yeah, it was really fun talking to those guys. I had a really great time watching that game, and it looked like those guys really had a great time playing it. Next week they'll be playing Loveland, so that'll be a lot of fun to watch. And as for Timnath, they'll be here again next week hosting Hindley.
What's good, y'all? Coach V here, and I got to go to the 49th Cannon game, one of the oldest rivalries, not only in Colorado, but west of the Mississippi. This is the game between Pueblo South and Pueblo East that took place on Friday the 13th, 2024. A lot of great history going into this one here. All-time wise, technically, Pueblo South, they lead this rivalry 42-19 and 1, I guess, as well, winning it last year by 2 scores, I believe. And so Pueblo South with a chance to go back-to-back in Cannon games. They haven't done this. Really, no team in this rivalry has done this since 2020 and 2021, I want to say. And then the last time I personally went to the Cannon game was... It was 2 years ago in 2022 during the infamous brawl that happened right before half that resulted in the game being called short over at half for the first time ever in the history of this game. So going into this 2024 season and this matchup, a lot at stake here for both teams per usual, as obviously it's a huge rivalry, one of the most cared about ones and passionate ones in the entire state. But on top of that, both teams 1-1 going into this game here. A win here would be massive for either team as far as momentum going into the rest of their season goes. So let's go ahead and hop into this classic. Slight spoiler alert, this was the closest game in years, and a big one at that. So in front of a mostly packed out stadium, thousands in attendance. Here we go in the first quarter. Pueblo East will go ahead and receive this ball and start with it. Here's what goes down. It's returned by Paki Amaro, and the crowd gets into it as he gets a nice little return to get them to the 29-yard line. They then hand it off to the running back right up the middle for a simple gain here to make it 2nd and 5. And then they call an end around to their star wide receiver, their senior receiver, Isaiah Trujillo, who gets a big first down, getting this crowd into it while also putting Pueblo East on the 50-yard line here in a big-time effort in what will be his last Cannon game ever. And then Dolphka Lewis here in at quarterback for Pueblo East, the dual threat. He just runs right, and he gets another first down in a row. Now, before they run the next play here, there's a penalty on South for encroachment, so now it's 1st and 5. Then hand it off here, but to Justice Freeman, by the way, but it's stopped for no gain, so 2nd down here. On 2nd down, Lewis at quarterback, he just runs it right. He gets close to a first down, but they mark him short, so 3rd and 1. A quick sneak in hurry up here would go ahead and give them that first down. Then Lewis, he rolls right and throws it towards the end zone here, but it's incomplete and out of bounds. On top of that, before this next play on 2nd down, there's a false start. So this play becomes 2nd and 15 coming up here. And on 2nd and 15, Paki Amaro on the end around, he low-key drops, I think, the handoff, but recovers it. So now it's 3rd and super long, though. A hard count would make it 3rd and 19, a little bit more manageable. But Lewis gets a snap, still in 3rd and long, looking to pass. He scrambles right here, getting about 13 yards, but is definitely short. So on 4th and 6 here, East decides to go aggressive. They go for it here, and Lewis, he gets a snap. He runs left, but he is looking to pass, and he is sacked by a group of Colts here from Pueblo South, led by number 77, Francisco Pacheco, who, like Isaiah Trujillo, is playing in his last Cannon game as well, being a senior. And so just like that, South, they take over on the 32 with 8:10 left in the first quarter. They go ahead and hand it off for about 2 yards. That goes to Chase Hurley. They like what they see because they do it again, and Hurley this time gets another couple yards, making it a solid 3rd and 2 here. Now on 3rd and 2, they decide to pass it here out of shotgun. Caden Herrera in at quarterback, the junior quarterback that is. He goes ahead and tries to throw the curl, but it's slightly off target here, so it's incomplete. But there's a penalty for pass interference on the defense. So now it's 1st down, about 1st down and 10 on the 50. After another incompletion, Herrera throws the quick curl to number 4 here. That would be Jake Pichiata, the junior wide receiver, their star wide receiver, getting involved early on here and gets about 6 yards here, setting up 3rd and 4. They then hand it off to Chase Hurley, the running back, junior running back that is, who is stopped short here, so it's 4th and 3. But They are looking to go for it. It looks like they're trying to do a hard count here as the crowd is getting loud for both sides. I mean, they've been loud, but specifically on this fourth down, getting loud. And unfortunately, it will be a false start on the offense instead. And so they decide to punt it after that. And so East, they take over on the 20 with 4:57 left here, looking to still score as it is scoreless so far. And so they go ahead and hand it off a couple of times here as East looking to establish the run and run this ball. They go ahead and give it to Isaiah Garcia up the middle for 4. Then Lewis, he goes right, he makes it another 4-yard gain. So still 3rd and 2. And then a hard count gives East the first down, the easy first down there. They then hand it off to Freeman up the middle, but he stopped for a loss. So now it's 2nd and 11. Lewis then goes ahead and rolls right and finds number 2, MJ Delgado, near the sideline, who turns it upfield and gets across midfield on a nice little play that gets that East sideline going. Following that first down, by the way, Lewis goes ahead and runs a quarterback power run right. And it looks like he gets a first down, but there is a penalty on holding. So now it's 1st and 20, repeating of that. And then they go ahead and hand it off to Freeman, right, trying to get some of those yards. But there's another penalty, so now it's 1st and 24. They then decide to throw it. Lewis throws it, but it's dropped, so that's 2nd down. On 2nd, Lewis tries to go deep here, but the DB tackles the receiver pretty late, so that's an obvious penalty. So now it's 1st and 10 on the 25. They then hand it off to Justice Freeman, who gives them another first down in a row, this time on the 13. And that's when South decides to call a timeout at the 2-minute, 3-second mark to try to attempt to stop some of this bleeding here on defense. Out of the timeout, they go ahead and hand it off to Freeman. He gets maybe a yard. Then Lewis, he gets a snap here. He scrambles left before just throwing this one away, looking to pass here instead of run. So now it's 3rd down. But a penalty would be thrown on the offense, so now it's 3rd and long here. And on 3rd and long, Lewis, he gets a snap and shotgun, and he launches one deep down the right sideline. But it's incomplete here. Well covered anyways. So now it's 4th down on the 33 here. I thought originally they were going to kick a field goal, but they line up and punt, and they are going to punt it, but it gets blocked here, and it goes so high in the air, and it eventually falls into the hands of Landon Cordova, who goes to the house to put Pueblo South up 7-0 with 1:11 left. An electric play here to get on the board for South as their sideline and their crowd is going wild right now. East, just a tough mistake here, taking a tad bit too long to punt this one. And so here we go. East, they take over right before the first quarter ends on the 20, looking to get something going, but this drive goes nowhere. A couple handoffs and incompletions brings up a 4th and 8 where they are forced to punt it. And so let's go to the second quarter. To start this quarter, East will actually punt it here. And so South will start with the ball, a chance to go up 2 scores, which is big time in this rivalry game. And also a lot of momentum on their side, not only scoring but getting the 3 and out right after. Now, the first down would be incomplete. They'll then hand it off to Hurley up the middle. He'd make it a manageable 3rd and 5. They'd give it back to Hurley, who would give them the first down. Following that, Caden Herrera on first down. He takes a shot deep, but it's incomplete. But there is a penalty thrown to East, so now that's another first down in a row here. They then hand it off up the middle here to Ricky Dean Martinez, who's also playing in his last Cannon game as a senior for South, and he makes it 2nd and 2. They then give it back to Martinez, who gets another first down, and then again to Martinez, who gets maybe a yard here to make it 2nd and 9. Then hand it off again to Chase Hurley as they're establishing the run. He makes it a manageable 3rd and 5. On 3rd down here, Herrera, he gets the ball on the snap out of shotgun, and he throws it to number 8. That's Damian Cordova, also playing in his last Cannon game, who powers forward for a first down, it looks like. But there will be a penalty thrown on South, so now it's 3rd and 15. On a tough holding penalty, I believe. And on 3rd down here, Herrera tries to throw the slant to Pisciata, but it is incomplete. So it's now 4th and 8. They're on the 20. South decides to call a timeout. their second one here at 8:01 in the second quarter. And then out of the timeout, they decide to go for it. A little gutsy here. But here we go. Caden Herrera, he gets a snap. He rolls right, trying to buy time, but eventually he's just forced to throw it away. Great defense by Pueblo East here, as there is just nowhere to go. So that's a turnover on downs, and East, with a little bit of momentum, takes over with 7:55 left. And so to start, they go ahead and run Dolph Lewis right. He gets maybe 7. They then hand it up the middle here to Justice Freeman, and that reignites this East crowd as they get a big first down as he gets a nice physical run. They're on the 43 now. They then go ahead and hand it off, or not hand it off, but Lewis, he keeps it and he goes left. He gets about 7 there, and then hand it off left to Freeman, but he gets rolled up and stopped by this Pueblo South defensive line. So now it's 3rd and 4 as that went for a loss here. But Lewis, he rolls out right and he throws the curl to Isaiah Trujillo, who goes ahead and gets that first down to make it 1st and 10. They then hand it off following that to number 23, Michael McCullough here, who makes it a solid 2nd and 4. Another handoff to Freeman would give them that first down, though. Following that, they would give it to Freeman again, trying to ride the hot hand, but unfortunately, a penalty, well, not unfortunate for East, but unfortunate for South, a penalty would be thrown for illegal substitution, so now it's 1st and 5. The game plan doesn't change, though, as they give it to Freeman again, and he gets that first down, so now it's 1st and goal on the 10 here. And on 1st and goal, Dolph Lewis, he gets a snap, and he goes right, and he gets the edge, and he walks it in for a touchdown, but there is a penalty holding on East, so not only does that take away the touchdown, but now it's 1st and 11 again. They go ahead and hand it off to Freeman here, who gets about 5 yards here, and then they go ahead on 2nd and 6 and call a quarterback draw for Lewis, who gets stopped on the 1. They go hurry up, though, and they just go ahead and quarterback sneak this thing in, and Lewis gets into the end zone for Pueblo East to tie this thing at 7-7 with 2:54 left here in this half. Now, not too much would happen for the rest of this quarter. South would take over on the 25, but after a couple incompletions and just some very unfortunate penalties, they find themselves in a tough 3rd and 17 here. And on 3rd and 17, they're looking to pass, but it's just nothing open. And East gets a huge sack that forces a punt with about 57 seconds left. But East, they're not really able to get anything going either. A couple penalties would hurt them. And so they go into the second half tied at 7-7 in this absolute classic. Now here in the 3rd quarter, South will receive here. And East decides to kick an onside kick, which is not a bad idea, but it is recovered by number 10, Julio Araujo, I want to say. And that puts them on the 47 in pretty solid field position, but they're not quite able to get anything going here. They try to run the ball with Hurley, but he only gets them so far. He gets them to a 2nd and 7, but then an incompletion makes it 3rd down on a pass deep that almost would have hit if it was just a second thrown sooner. And then on another pass that was incomplete, that forces a 4th down where they punt. And so East takes over on the 38 with 11:02 left. But not too much going for them. They are trying to run the ball here, not really passing it so far. They do throw a little quick hitter to number 2. East does that is. So that's a Lewis to MJ Delgado, who makes it 2nd and 6, but a handoff up the middle is stuffed, and then Lewis tries to roll left and throws a curl, but it is off the mark, and so they end up punting. South, by the time they take over, they're on the 21 with only 6:55 left here in the 3rd, as both offenses are kind of stuttering, or it could be argued that both defenses are playing well. Either way, here is what happens for South. They go ahead and throw a quick one to the flat, and I think that's to Pisciata here, but he gets absolutely popped as the ball flies out here. They do call it incomplete, but for a second, the East crowd is going crazy as they think that they might have potentially got a fumble that would have put them in the red zone, though it's incomplete. So now it's 2nd down. They go ahead and hand it off to Hurley. He gets a nice run up the middle for 9, so making it 3rd and 1. They hand it off to Hurley again, who bounces outside and finds a way to get the first down. They then throw the screen route here to Naaman Robinson, the junior, who makes a player miss and then bursts down the field here, getting the South sideline fired up. Their turn this time as he gives them a first down on the 45 past midfield. They then hand it off to Ricky Dean Martinez, who gets about 1. They give it to Martinez again, who gets another 1-yard gain. So now it's 3rd and 8 here. And on 3rd down, Herrera, he breaks a couple tackles, he reverses fields, and then he throws across his body in a sensational play to David Dietz here, the tight end, who brings it in for a key first down to keep this drive alive and put South on the 34. This South crowd going crazy after that one. South then decides to call a timeout at 4:16 left to calm things down here as they are approaching the red zone across the midfield. And so out of the timeout, they go ahead and hand it off to number 3 Martinez, who goes up the middle, but gets no gain there. Then Herrera, he tries to go deep here to number 5 to Robinson, but it's number 5 versus number 5 here. Number 5 of Pueblo East being Braylon Bailu, I want to say, who goes ahead and breaks that one up. A nice play here by him. So now it's 3rd and 10, but on 3rd down, they go ahead and throw this one, but it's incomplete. The receiver kind of gets thrown down after the ball hits the ground here. I think it's pretty obvious here. It's just really late. You kind of just got to let go, but they're entangled and he decided to throw him down. So that's obviously a penalty, a tough one for East. So now it's a first down on the 33. Then hand it off to Hurley a couple of times. He makes it 3rd and 9. And on 3rd and 9, Herrera, he keeps the read option, but he is swarmed by this East defense. So now it's a tough 4th and 17. South decides to call their second timeout of the second half at 1:42 left in the third quarter. Still a lot of ball game to play. But obviously the South coaching staff feeling like that this would be a key down here. And so here we go. 4th and super long here. Here's what happens. Caden Herrera, he gets the snap and shotgun. He's buying some time. He's rolling out right, and he throws it to number 8, and he makes a diving catch. That's Damian Cordova, who just barely, and I mean barely, gets in front of the marker here to keep this Pueblo South drive alive here. A clutch first down for South in this one. And so here we go in the red zone, I believe now, or at least approaching it. They go ahead and hand it off to Hurley, but he is smacked by number 57 of Pueblo East, Dom Benavidez, who makes a big time play here and gets this East crowd back into it. So now it's 2nd and goal here. And then there would actually be a penalty there on South, so it would be 2nd and 19, still 2nd and goal, but 2nd and 19. And then before South could even run a play, another penalty on them, a false start, would make it 2nd and 24 as South is going the wrong way. And that's how the third quarter ends. So here we go. 4th quarter. It is tied 7-7 South. They made it into the red zone, but now it's 2nd and 24. But before they could run a play, another penalty on South makes it 2nd and 29 here. And then finally, like 3 penalties later, South is able to run a play, and here's what happens. Caden Herrera, he gets a snap, and he's looking to pass, but there's just nothing there. He just decides to scramble, get what he can. He makes it 3rd and 23. And so on 3rd and 23, Herrera, he gets the snap. He's looking to pass, but there's just nothing there, and so he's forced to throw it away here. And so here we go. And actually, no, sorry, he didn't throw it away. He was stopped for at least a 1-yard loss. I think he might have just ran out of bounds before he could throw this one away. And so here we go. Pueblo South on the 24. They're kicking it, but this kick is blocked here. And so East, they're not able to return it in the mad scramble for this ball. It bounces out of bounds, but it doesn't matter as East takes over with 11:01 left here in the 4th quarter. And so here we go. It's crunch time. Who wants it more? Let's see what happens here. Lewis, he goes ahead and goes left, and he tiptoes down the sideline, and he just keeps tiptoeing down the sideline for a huge gain as this East crowd is going crazy for a big-time game, giving them a 1st and 10 on the 45 now for about 20-plus yards there. They then hand it off to Freeman, who has stood up here. The ref definitely blows his whistle, but Freeman breaks loose after, and the east sideline is going crazy because they feel like they are being cheated, but the whistle was definitely blown before, so he's down. And so following that, it doesn't matter as Dolph Galuz, he gets a snap and he runs right and he gets a 1st down. They then give it back to Freeman, who powers it up the middle for another 1st down. They go hurry up here and do a quick handoff to Freeman, but this time South is ready. They get him for a loss. It's 2nd and 11. And so here we go, 2nd and 11 for Pueblo as they are just on the edge of the red zone here. Here's what happens. Lewis gets a snap and he runs right. He's looking for a lane here, and eventually he finds one and he goes down the right sideline, eliciting a sonic boom from this Pueblo East crowd as they're going crazy as Dolph Lewis scores on this electric sideline run for the touchdown to put them up 14-7 with 9:42 left in this Cannon game. But you know what? It's only 14-7. It's not a 2-score game, and there's almost 10 minutes left. So South, they go to work here. They take over on the 20. It starts with a quick hitter to Cordova that goes for about 8. Then there's a penalty thrown on East, so now that's an automatic 1st here. After that, it's 1st down here. They throw a quick one to Jake Pisciata. It's a little low, but it's caught for a 2-yard gain here. They then hand it off to Hurley, who almost gets the 1st down. He stopped at 3rd and inches. They just go ahead and do a quick handoff to Hurley here, and he does eventually get the 1st down, extending this drive. They then run an RPO to number 4, Pisciata, but it is blown up by East, so now it's 2nd and 12. They then run another quick RPO to Robinson here, and he gets a solid gain of about 5 here, setting up 3rd and 7. On 3rd and 7, Herrera, he gets the snap, rolls out right, and he throws the nice out route on the money to Damian Cordova for a big 1st down, or what I thought was a 1st down, but they actually called him short inches at this point, and so South calls their last timeout right here at the 6-minute 12 mark, right before the 4th down play, and they're going for it. And so out of the timeout, here's what they dial up. Herrera, he gets a snap, he goes left, and he throws it to number 33, David Dietz, who has to make an insane diving catch to stop this one from being incomplete, but he gets the catch to give them the 1st down on 4th. They then hand it off to Hurley, who gets about 5 here, setting up 2nd down. And on 2nd, Herrera, he gets a snap, looking to throw it. He goes down the left sideline to Naaman Robinson. He has him in one-on-one, and he dives for it, but it is just out of reach, just hitting the fingertips, I think, here. So it is incomplete. If he was able to reel that in, that would have been a touchdown. To make things worse, before they could run a play on 3rd down, there's a penalty on South to now make it 3rd and 10 here. And so here's what happens. 3rd and 10, Herrera, he gets a snap. He's scanning. He's scrambling. He throws off platform, and it is picked off by Pueblo East here. I want to say that's Angel Garcia who gets the big-time interception, who might have just stepped East closer to winning this game. But here's what happens. They go ahead and call a penalty against East, which happened before the play, and so that interception is not only erased, but Pueblo South gets a 1st down here on the holding call called on Pueblo East, and so now here we go, a new set of downs. South approaching the end zone. They go ahead and call a shot down the right sideline, but great coverage by number 3 of Pueblo East. That's Xavier Campavong, I want to say. Goes ahead and forces that wide receiver out of bounds here. And even if it was on the money, he would have had that one incomplete. So that's incomplete. That makes 2nd down here. 2nd and 10, that is. But a penalty is thrown against South here. I believe a false start. So now it's 2nd and 15. And on 2nd down, Herrera rolls out, escaping the pressure. He tries to throw it on the run to a crossing wide receiver, but it is broken up by number 44 of Pueblo East, Logan Trujillo. A clutch breakup, by the way, to set up 3rd down here. On 3rd and 10, Herrera goes to his number 1 receiver, Jake Pisciata, who makes a tough physical catch on the slant. Also gets laid out right after that. Getting some yards there, but it wouldn't be enough for a 1st down. But now there's a penalty thrown on East, so it would actually make it 3rd and 5 here. And on 3rd and 5, Herrera drops back and he throws a nice corner out to number 8, Damian Cordova, who makes this catch here for a clutch first down. Very close to the markers once more. And then this time, Pueblo East decides to take a timeout with 4:04 left here, trying to regain the composure of this defense. And so out of the timeout, here's what happens. South, they hand it off to Chase Hurley, who gets about 2 yards there. Following that, they hand it off to Hurley, and he finds a lane up the middle, but he is short on the 2-yard line here. Before they could run a play on 3rd down, though, it is another false start on Pueblo South. So now it goes from it being 3rd and 2 on the goal line to 3rd and 7 here. On 3rd and 7, they hand it off to Hurley, but it looks like he coughs it up, but it is recovered by South. So a little lucky there, but now it's 4th and 5. And this is the game here, as South has no timeouts. They're just going for it. And so here is what happens on 4th and 5. Caden Herrera, he gets a snap. He throws the quick out to number 8, Damian Cordova, who makes the diving catch and ties this game in a big-time effort as the South crowd is going crazy, invigorated by this touchdown to potentially tie this game. But South decides to go for the dagger. They want to win this game and bring it back for the 2nd year in a row. So they go for 2, and here is what happens. Herrera gets the snap. He rolls right. He throws it to Jake Pisciata, who makes the diving catch, and he's in for the 2-point conversion as South retakes the lead at 1:58 left. 15-14 here. East stunned, shocked by 2 great diving catches on 4th down on the 2-point conversion. But this game is not over. East with a chance, only down by 1 and about 2 minutes left. They got a 2-minute drill. They take over on the 36 to start. Here we go. This is what happens. First play, it's a wide receiver sweep, a reverse to the left side, and it's Isaiah Trujillo, the senior, in his final Cannon game. He gets loose, he gets the edge, and he has a convoy of blockers ahead, and he rips one loose down the sideline and is stopped just past the midfield here. First down as East with a lot of momentum as their crowd gets into it. They're on the 43-yard line. And go and hurry up here. Dolphka Lewis, he goes ahead and runs it. He gets about 2 yards. But then there is an injury here. So it's an injury timeout at 1:27 left here. They're on the 41, 2nd and 8. And so a little bit of a breather from the excitement here. But once that player is able to get up and basically hop off here, as I know that adrenaline is pumping right now. Here we go. The action resumes. And so Lewis, he gets a snap. He goes right up the middle. He gets the first down. Following that first down, Lewis on the option. He goes right. He goes for 4. It's 2nd and 6. You can feel the tension as Pueblo East calls a timeout at 1:04 left. 1 timeout left in this game here. And so here we go as they are approaching, I think they're in the red zone by now, just the edge of the red zone. Here's what happens. Lewis, he throws it, and it's a double pass here. The receiver flashes open into the back of the end zone, but number 4 of Pueblo South, that's Jake Pisciata, he's all over that, and he is able to break that one up as it wasn't quite a perfect pass on the money here. If it was thrown in time, it might have been a touchdown, honestly. And so incomplete here. 3rd down, they go ahead and throw a quick throw to Paki Amaro left, who goes ahead and gets the first down required to give them some yards here. They then run it right up the middle for Dolphka Lewis, who gets a nice couple yards before going hurry up and handing it off to Justice Freeman, who powers forward. He spins, he reaches over, he's in as Pueblo East retakes the lead with 13 seconds left here in this game. On Friday the 13th, Pueblo East punching this one in. A great effort by Justice Freeman. This East sideline and crowd is going crazy for this one. Now, there is 13 seconds left, and here's what happens. Damian Cordova on the kickoff. He decides to take this one out, and he gets them to the 24, but does use up 5 seconds left. So There's only 8 seconds left in this game here. And so on first down, Herrera, he tries to throw a corner route here, or what looks to be a corner, but no one's there. It goes out of bounds. So now there's 4 seconds left after that throwaway. And on this last down of the 49th Cannon game, Caden Herrera, he gets a snap. He rolls right. He launches one deep to Pisciata, but it is knocked down as Pueblo East wins a big-time game, 21-15, as they reclaim the cannon for the first time since 2022 here, the infamous brawl of 2022, and they win this one in an absolute thriller to add to the historic, storied rivalry that is the Cannon game here. Pueblo East reclaims that cannon in this big-time win, a gutsy one, as the crowds for both teams were going crazy here. You could feel every single momentum shift. I don't even know if I did it justice, to be honest with you, as that's how loud it was throughout this whole thing. But, you know, a lot of credit to both teams. They played their hearts out here. Let me go ahead and talk about them. Let's talk about Pueblo South. Those plays, you know the two, the ones that they made to take the lead, electric. I had chills. That throw on the quick out to Cordova to score the touchdown on 4th down. Oh my God. Great play. And the crowd was going crazy. And then to decide to go for 2, to not settle for overtime, to go for the win, that took guts. I'm not gonna lie. That might have been the gutsiest play I've ever seen in all my years covering Colorado high school football on the podcast. That took some legit guts, and it was a great play. But, you know, at the end, they just came up a little bit short, is what it was. For Pueblo East, I mean, let me talk about them real quick. Gutsy 2-minute drill right there. Shout out Isaiah Trujillo, man. That reverse to go ahead and get this drive started, kicked off. Oh my God, it got the east sideline and crowd back into it. It really, I mean, that's kind of when I knew, like, okay, this could get dangerous here if you're a South. You got to be on your P's and Q's here. And for the most part, they were, but it just came down to those last 2 plays that just happened really quick. The Dolphka Lewis run and then the Justice Freeman run to score. Absolutely insane. Just absolutely insane here. This game was insane. Arguably, I am biased because of how recent this is, so there's definitely some recency bias, but this might have been the greatest game I've ever covered in my life. So, or, you know, in the couple years that I've done the podcast. But just an excellent game here. Shout out to both teams. Shout out to Pueblo, by the way. Great hospitality, and I'm not just saying that. I definitely have been mistreated more this season more than any other one. And, you know, there are so many nice people. The event workers were very kind, you know, talked to them a little bit before, after the game. And they're just great people. So got a lot of love for them. And shout out that Pueblo school district here, man. They did a great job putting this thing up, putting it on in what ended up being another classic to add to this Cannon game here. I mean, it was excellent. So just a great event all around here. If I had to pick a playmaker of the game, I think it has to be Justice Freeman. Honestly, he made some very tough runs here that got this Pueblo East team going and got that crowd going, which I think is important. You can't lose your crowd in a game like this. When you got thousands backing you, you cannot afford to lose your crowd. And so he did a good job keeping the spirits up, you know, keeping the toughness up for East over there and doing what they gotta do. And so shout out Justice Freeman. He definitely deserves Playmaker of the game after his performance in this one. But I mean, there's so many great players that contributed. Dolphka Lewis was big. Isaiah Trujillo was big. You know, that defense as a whole was huge for them. And so I don't know. I think this is definitely something that they could use to propel them forward momentum-wise through the rest of their season and make a push for the playoffs, because as it looks right now, this 3A playoff push, and it's always pretty competitive and tough. I think it's the toughest one out of all the playoff pushes in the state, but it's going to come down to the wire. And so to win one like this over a team that'll also be, you know, hopefully competing for a playoff spot in South, that's absolutely huge for East. So We'll see what happens, but this was an excellent game here. Once again, shout out Pueblo. Appreciate the hospitalities. Great people over there. This was an absolute banger of a game. Make sure you check out our TikTok at Playmakers Corner to check out those highlights. But once more in the 49th Cannon game, Pueblo East retakes the Cannon, winning 21-15 in an absolute banger of a game over Pueblo South.
Hey, what is going on, everyone? This is Phoenix Barons with Playmakers Corner, here to give the 3A Week 3 recap of all the games that happened this past weekend. As of this recording, September 16th, 2024, I'm going off of most of the stats that are already provided, so bear with me as some schools do not have any stats updated, and I'll mostly be talking about 3A schools this weekend because there are a lot of mixed classification matchups, a lot of 3A teams facing non-3A teams, so we're going to get through that, and we have a handful of 3A matchups as well. So let's get right into it, starting off with Thursday, September 12th. Adams City, which is a 4A school, was at Greeley Central, but it was no problem for Greeley Central as they were able to pick up the win, 13-58. Greeley Central had a hell of a performance from number 5, Carlos Cardoza, the senior, who had 10 carries for 167 yards and 3 touchdowns. Also, a couple running backs back there with 2 touchdowns apiece. Number 8, Gabe Galindo, the sophomore, who had 8 carries for 62 yards. And number 10, Patrick Lesnicki, the senior, number 7, who had 7 carries for 47 yards. Moving on, Mountain Range, a 5A school, was at Mountain View, and Mountain View had a pretty solid home performance against the 5A school as they were able to beat them 45-3 off of the performance from number 14, Cam Frost, the junior, who had 8 completions in 14 attempts for 120 yards and 3 touchdowns as well as 1 interception. But they were able to get the job done, all thanks to number 1, Tyson Maris-Benz, the senior, who had an amazing performance, 8 receptions for 64 yards and 3 touchdowns. He was definitely the favorite for Cam Frost throughout that game, and he also delivered on defense, having 7 tackles. And I can't forget the performance from number 24, Keegan Amons, the senior. He only had 1 completion for 65 yards for 1 touchdown, but hey, that's a big play for a wide receiver and a running back hybrid that can do a little bit of everything. 21 carries for 157 yards and a touchdown, as well as his 1 reception for 2 yards. So a solid performance from Mountain View as they took the home win. Moving on, Palmer was at Dotery, which is a 4A school, and it wasn't looking good for Palmer as they came up short on the road, 12-47. Unfortunate loss for that one. Roosevelt at Ponderosa. This was a big-time game for Roosevelt, looking to really establish themselves as a top-tier 3A school this year. And what better team to do it against than Ponderosa as they got the job done 42-24. Solid performances from Roosevelt's number 12, Josiah Ramirez, the junior. 9 completions in 10 attempts for 130 yards and 2 touchdowns. Also a great performance from number 31, Luck Visual, the senior, who had 22 carries for 159 yards, getting it done on the ground. Number 8, Milo Pasquale, though, the junior, had 11 carries for 77 yards, but it was his 3 touchdowns that made the big difference in this game. And I would be remiss to not give number 26, Noel Sanchez, the senior, a shout-out, who had a 25-yard pick six and 14 tackles that led the team. So a solid performance from Roosevelt as they got the win on the road. Eagle Valley at Grand Junction Central, a 4A school. They definitely played like a 4A school as they were able to get the job done in their house. Eagle Valley was not as unfortunate as they got shut out 34-0. A 3A matchup, purely strictly 3A, and a solid 3A matchup as Alamosa went into Pueblo Central's house, and Pueblo Central was defending it ferociously. A huge shutout win, 43-0. A solid performance from this running back room Pueblo Central has. Number 0, Amari Brown, the senior, with 15 carries for 185 yards and a touchdown. Number 7, Gennaro Pino, the senior, who had 4 carries for 96 yards and 2 touchdowns. Number 25, Joseph Castro, the senior, who had 2 carries for 37 yards, but he did pick up a big-time touchdown. And number 31, Aiden Hazalt, the senior, who had 7 carries for 102 yards and 2 touchdowns. So a dominating performance from this running back room is what led to this big-time win for them at home. Kennedy at Lincoln. Kennedy just lost a game last week to Bennett, a 2A school, so they had to let their frustrations out on a 2A school in Lincoln, as everyone got a touchdown. It was a pretty even matchup for Kennedy, pretty balanced on all sides as they dominated Lincoln 62-0. Huge win for the Commanders. Moving on. Green Mountain at Pomona. Green Mountain, one of the top-ranked 3A schools, at least for Playmakers Corner, went into Pomona's house, and it was not easy, as Pomona got the job done, hosting the top-ranked, the formerly top-ranked Green Mountain, now on top of Green Mountain, 33-7. Thanks to the performances from number 33, Emmett Munson, the junior, who was 5 for 7 for 138 yards and 1 touchdown, but it was on the ground where he delivered as well. 11 carries and 61 yards for 1 touchdown. Also, shout out to rushing touchdowns from number 30, Ethan Vu, the junior, and number 36, Luis Santana. And on defense, it was a totally dominated game by number 18, Jadon Molina, the junior, who had a pick 6 going 58 yards. He also had 4 pass deflections and 5 tackles. And that's all for the Thursday games. Moving on to Friday, let's start off with Hayes, the 5A school from Kansas, at Wheat Ridge. It was going to be a daunting task for Wheat Ridge, and it absolutely came. And it was a very, very tough matchup for the Farmers as they went down 42-7. Shout out, though, to number 6, Bennett Wilkes, the senior, who had a great performance, having 6 receptions for 71 yards and 1 touchdown, the lone touchdown for the Farmers. And this defense also was able to get to the quarterback 6 times. So a lot of good things from this Wheat Ridge team, facing a very challenging 5A school from Kansas. Stanley Lake at Bear Creek. It was a 4A school for Bear Creek. And so Stanley Lake had a tough challenge ahead of them, and it's not looking good as they fall to Bear Creek 7-26. Moving on, Res Christian, a 2A school in Palisade. Palisade coming off of a win off of another 2A school in Delta in week 1. So they're not unfamiliar with facing big-time 2A schools, as they got the job done at home, getting the win 20-6. Big performances from Palisades, number 30, Caleb Johnson, the senior, who had 6 carries for 10 yards, but 2 touchdowns. It pays to score. Also, number 7, Branson Springer, the junior, who had 9 carries for 57 yards, deserves a shout-out. And number 2, Nathan Umberger, the receiver, top receiver of this game, the junior, who had 3 receptions for 120 yards and 1 touchdown. Cheyenne Mountain, a 4A school, was in Coronado. Coronado had a good win this past week, and now they had a really tough task ahead of them, and it just wasn't enough to defend their home. They lost to Cheyenne Mountain 30-14. Solid performance, though, from number 12, Thomas Buckmiller of Coronado, who was 20 for 37 for 213 yards and 2 touchdowns and only 1 interception. Not a bad performance in that loss. And number 3, Lyric Smith, the junior, who had 8 receptions and 92 yards, as well as receiving those 2 touchdowns for Coronado. Riverdale Ridge at Severance. Tough matchup for Severance as they host a 4A school in Riverdale Ridge, but it was very, very, very close, actually. Only able to lose the game, but it was a very, very close game, actually, as Riverdale Ridge got the win over Severance, only 13-8. So way to perform at home for Severance. Tough loss, but a lot they can grow on from that. Delta taking on Rifle. This is a really interesting matchup. Rifle recently elevated from 2A in the Western Slope that they were playing in last year. They were one of the top teams, and they host a powerhouse in 2A in Delta. And it was not the performance the Rifle wanted at all, as Delta went in and practically did whatever they wanted with Rifle. 0 completions in 8 attempts passing altogether from both quarterbacks. It was not a good performance at all, but a little bit of a bright spot on that Rifle team was number 21, Isaac Valencia, the senior, who had 21 carries for 94 yards, as Rifle got shut out by Delta 49-0. Moving on, Thompson Valley at Timnath. I was actually in attendance for this game and provided a little bit of a game recap that we'll be talking about earlier, that will be talked about in this podcast. But Thompson Valley did get the big win over Timnath. Huge performance from Garrett Hendrickson, who put the team on his back, and a solid performance from that offensive line to help him get 2 rushing touchdowns in his performance. Thompson Valley getting the win in Timnath, 24-9. Moving on, Greeley West, the 4A school, taking on Northridge in Northridge. Not a problem, though, for Northridge. Greeley West, not typically the best 4A school out there, so this was definitely going to be a prove-it moment for Northridge, and they delivered. Number 3, Justin Thill, the senior, 14 for 25 for 210 yards and 3 touchdowns. He also had 4 carries for 15 yards and a touchdown. Number 5, Jermaine Wilson, the sophomore, who had 13 carries, 93 yards, and 2 rushing touchdowns. Very solid performance, and also a tremendous performance by Yael Padilla, the junior, who delivered in both rushing and receiving, having 14 carries for 43 yards and a touchdown, as well as 2 receptions for 70 yards and a touchdown. Northridge got the win over Greeley West, 45-12. Palmer Ridge at Lewis Palmer. Palmer Ridge was in the state championship last year and had a hell of a battle, and they were going into Lewis Palmer's house, and they were not going to go out without a win, and that's exactly what happened. Lewis Palmer, they put up a little bit of a fight, but it just wasn't enough. Palmer Ridge gets the win, 48-19. Moving on, Lutheran at Pueblo West. Now, this was an amazing game. Both schools are practically at the top of their classifications right now. Lutheran having a win over Texas school earlier on this season, and Pueblo West just in the top 10 rankings. This is a big game for Lutheran, but it was just a tough outing for number 12, Eli Abramson, the junior, who had 12 completions for 31 attempts for 227 yards. He had 1 touchdown and a staggering 4 interceptions. That was the real difference maker in this game. He did have 4 carries for 18 yards as well as 1 touchdown, and also a solid performance from number 30, Sawyer Wald, the senior, who had 22 carries for 109 yards and 1 touchdown. They were just not able to get the win in Pueblo West. They lose 47-21. Pueblo East and Pueblo South. It was a highly anticipated matchup, a matchup that had been banned for a couple years due to I'm not sure if it was a halftime altercation or if it happened just before the half, but the game got canceled. It got ended in the middle of the game, and this team hasn't faced each other for a while, so tensions were hot. But Pueblo East went into Pueblo South's house and was able to come away with the win, 21-15. We weren't able to get any stats for Pueblo East at this time, but some solid performance from Pueblo South under number 11, Caden Herrera, the junior, 16 for 30 for 120 yards and 1 touchdown. Also some solid performances from number 8, Damian Cordova, the senior, who had 7 receptions for 45 yards and a touchdown. And also number 21, Landon Cordova, the sophomore, who had a fumble return touchdown, able to keep this team alive in the game. Solid performance from the South, but it just wasn't enough as they fall short to Pueblo East. Glenwood Springs at Basalt. And Basalt is a very, very well-respected 2A school. They're always in the playoffs, and Glenwood Springs had a challenge going down there into their house to get a win, and it just was not in their favor. Basalt absolutely put this team on notice, was able to come away with the win, 35-7. Littleton at Englewood. Englewood's a little two-way school, but it really didn't matter to Englewood who they were facing. Littleton went in there, and they did not forget the matchup they just had. It was a dominating performance by Englewood as they shut out Littleton 63-0. Windsor hosted Montbello, the 4A school, and Windsor has a big old chip on their shoulder. They had that loss to Green Mountain week 1, and they wanted to execute a perfect performance, and that's exactly what they did. Able to shut out Montbello 54-0. Number 3, Trip Thomas, the senior, had 6 carries for 105 yards and 4 touchdowns. A huge performance on the ground for him. And also a big shout out to number 31, Tegan Cole, the senior, who had 8 carries for 130 yards and 2 touchdowns. It was a solid performance by Windsor as they shut out Montbello 54-0. Skyview at Niwot. Unfortunately, no stats for Niwot as they came up short to Skyview 14-6. A solid performance by Skyview's number 4, Carlos Carrillo, who was 4 for 9 for 35 yards and a touchdown. He did throw an interception, but on the ground is where he was the most efficient, having 18 carries for 72 yards and 1 touchdown as Skyview came away with the win. Pueblo County at Harrison. Harrison has been kind of pushing that top 10 rankings a little bit, but they came up just short to Pueblo County in a very, very tough loss. Pueblo County able to come away with the win, all thanks to number 10, Cohen Glenn, the senior, 8 for 18 for 85 yards and a touchdown, but it was on the ground where he was the deadliest. 34 carries, 210 yards, and 1 touchdown. A big win for Pueblo County on the road. Canyon City at Summit, another solid 3A matchup. No stats from Summit at this time, but Canyon City went in and absolutely dominated and got the shutout on the road. Huge win for Canyon City as they win 21-0. Aspen at Steamboat Springs. Steamboat Springs hosting another 2A school in Aspen. Aspen had some pretty close games so far. Steamboat, all they've played is 2A teams at this point. So it's kind of hard to judge how good this Steamboat Springs team really is until we see them in some actual 3A competition. But they were able to get the job done against Aspen in a close one, and a solid performance from Steamboat Springs number 17, Cohen Vanderbosch, the junior, who had 4 receptions for 108 yards and 1 touchdown, able to get the win at home. George Washington at Evergreen. George Washington, a 4A school, able to go into Evergreen's house, but not come away with a win. Evergreen was able to defend their house, and a great performance from number 28, Jace Jody, the senior, who had 14 carries for 95 yards and 1 touchdown. He also had 1 reception for 1 yard. Not too big, but, when you get that catch, it's also very fun to be able to say, yeah, I caught a ball. 5 tackles as well on defense. It was a good performance as Evergreen got the job done, winning 28-6. Moving on to Saturday, September 14th. There was only 2 games so far. And as of this recording, Sierra at Pueblo County, the score hasn't been updated, so I'm not exactly sure how that game transpired. Wasn't able to figure out where to find the score at this time, so I'm not going to say too much about that game, and that game is to be announced. Rampart, a 4A school, went to Discovery Canyon. Discovery Canyon had a pretty rough season so far. They've been trying to get back into it, and a good team to face to try and redirect themselves is definitely Rampart. But unfortunately, it was not the game that they wanted. They come up short to Rampart 14-10. Unable to get any stats from Discovery Canyon at this time, but Discovery Canyon unfortunately coming up short. And that does it for all the games for this weekend. And for my Player of the Week nominees, I got 3 people. My first one goes out to Garrett Hendrickson, the quarterback out of Thompson Valley. After the performance that I saw out of him, 19 carries for 118 yards and 2 touchdowns, he definitely has this team together like glue. Like, this is a solid leader, and doing that interview with him where he brought his offensive line, this is somebody that definitely performed very well. And if he had that punt return touchdown, man, that would have been really, really nice to also talk about, but unfortunately that penalty took it away. I'm also going to give a nomination to Trip Thomas, the running back wide receiver hybrid out of Windsor. His 6 carries for 105 yards and 4 touchdowns is absolutely dominant, and a big reason why I wanted to pick him for a nomination. And my final nomination is Tyson Mares-Benz, the tight end and defensive end out of Mountain View. 8 receptions for 64 yards, but those 3 touchdowns, he's a favorite out there, and he also contributed on defense, getting 7 total tackles. But for my player of the week winner, I'm going to have to give it to Trip Thomas out of Windsor. I haven't seen anybody in 3A have 4 touchdowns in a game this week, and having 4 touchdowns, being responsible for nearly half of the score in the entire shutout. He was definitely a playmaker, and that shows. And getting 100 yards on the ground is also really nice. And just doing all of that in 6 carries, it shows how proficient he is and shows how dominant this team is. So he is my playmaker of the week for week 3, 3A. And that does it for me for this recap. Thank you so much for listening.
Obviously, you want a trainer who can make you stronger and faster with the work you put in, but what about a trainer who can help you rehab and recover like the pros? Look no further than Junkyard Training, that not only offers specific strength and speed training, but also offers a plethora of recovery and rehab techniques like cryo, cupping, recovery boots, and so much more. Learn more today by visiting junkyardtraining.net or call 303-521-7594. Once again, visit junkyardtraining.net or call 303-521-7594 and get started today.
Hello, beautiful people, and welcome back to episode 400 of the Playmakers Corner podcast. I am your host for this segment of the 4A recap for today. I'm Gideon, and let me just tell you all, today we have a lot of games in store, so I'm just going to move quickly here through the different games and stats that we do have, because we have a lot of recaps coming up. Starting off, we have the Northfield Nighthawks facing off against the Heritage Eagles. Northfield losing this game 17-40. Unfortunately, we do not have stats for this one or even a frame-by-frame box score, but very good win here against Heritage against a team that played Mesa Ridge very, very well last week. Next up, we have the Doherty Spartans defeating the Palmer Terrors 47-12. Palmer, they're 3A now, so we'll only go over Doherty's stats. But Doherty, Thomas Gillespie, 6 tackles. Mr. Henriksen with 7, a junior, by the way. And then Mr. Romick Washington with 5 tackles in this game. No sacks, but there was a forced fumble by Henriksen, which was recovered for 40 yards by Laren Donald. So, good game here from the Doherty Spartans to stay in the win column. Palmer actually did lead heading into the second quarter, 6-0, but then Doherty scored 21 points to Palmer's 6 in the second quarter and held on, scoring double digits in each frame after that. So Doherty, very good game here. They now sit at 2-1 and will play Rampart next week. Next up, we have Adams City versus Greeley Central. The Eagles of Adams City High School lost this one 13-58. Greeley Central is now 3A, so we will focus on Adams City here. In terms of tackles, the leader was Jaime Ramirez, 11 solo, 7 assists for 18 total. Freshman Mr. Holguin with 7 total tackles, and then Mr. Victoria Alvarado with 5 tackles and 1 for loss. Mr. Victoria Alvarado had a sack in this game as well. And those are the only stats that have been entered here for Adams City in this game, but it looks like they do have at least a couple of players that they can count on, especially if Aragine, the freshman, continues to develop. But we'll see how that goes for them. Next up, we have the Ponderosa Mustangs losing to the 3A Roosevelt Rough Riders 42-24. Ponderosa has not entered any stats in this game, but they allowed 3 rushing touchdowns, 2 passing touchdowns, and a pick 6 in this game. So Ponderosa just not having a good day here. Allowed multiple players with 10 tackles, allowed 130 passing yards and 224 rush yards. Next up, though, we have a win in the column for 4A finally. We have Grand Junction Central, the Warriors, defeating the Eagle Valley Devils 34-0. 14 points in the first quarter for Grand Junction Central, 0 in the second, 6 in the third, and 14 in the fourth to beat Eagle Valley. But no stats here for Grand Junction Central just yet. Although through the score tracker, it does look like Asher Carter did have at least 2 of the touchdowns here for Eagle Valley, 1 through the air and 1 on the ground at least. Next up, we have Broomfield defeating the 5A Rocky Mountain Lobos 51-7 in this matchup. Broomfield ended up having multiple long runs, multiple long passes, just an all-around dominant performance. It looks like everyone got in on the action here. And I believe there were 578 total yards of offense, 388 rushing yards, only 1 interception thrown by Broomfield here. So it's good to see that the Eagles are staying on top of it. Next up, we have our selection of Friday games. Starting off, we have Grand Junction taking down Denver North. The Tigers coming out on top of the Vikings, 49-0 in this one. 21 points in each of the first and second quarter, 7 points in the third, and 0 in the fourth for the Tigers. Mason Langland, the senior, with 6 tackles, along with Aiden Boss with the same mark. Austin Music with 5. 2 interceptions by AJ Schlachter, 1 by Boss, and 1 by Music as well. We have a forced fumble by Schlachter, 1 by Music, and 1 by Langland, along with a recovery by Langland, a recovery from Alex Martinez, and then a pass deflection here from Xavier Chavez. No stats here from Denver North yet, but good game here by Grand Junction. Next up, we have Stanley Lake being defeated by Bear Creek, 26-7. Bear Creek, Riley Wilson with 188 passing yards, 14 for 27. Jojo Hernandez, 19 carries for 195 yards and 2 touchdowns. Xavier Duran with 5 carries for 2 touchdowns and 43 yards. Kamari May, 116 receiving yards, so much more varied attack here from the Bears than the past couple of years. In terms of defense, Denard Taylor, 7 tackles, Ben Tafoya and Dylan Thomas, each with 6, and then Jordan Cordova with 5. 1 pick each for Dylan Thomas and Marcos Garza, along with Thomas getting a pass deflection, Isaiah Garcia forcing a fumble, Jonah Hernandez with a recovery, Tafoya with a recovery, and then Henry Romero with a deflection. All around, very good game here. Mr. Rasmussen with 2 PATs on 2 attempts. Looking forward to seeing how this squad does over the course of the rest of the season. Next up, Falcon would travel down to Farmington, New Mexico, and lose to the Scorpions 6-40. No stats here yet from the Falcons or the Scorpions, but it's good that they went down to Farmington and were willing to play that game. Next up, we have Aurora Central losing to Gateway. The Trojans losing 7-8 to the Olympians, so I guess it's a regular old Trojan war. Aurora Central would lead for most of the game, scoring in the first quarter, being up 7-0 until the fourth when Gateway would score and get the conversion to win this game. For Aurora Central, Markel Perkins, 165 passing yards. And then Mr. Fitzgerald, 1-for-1 passing for 33 yards and a touchdown in this one. Perkins would also have 145 rushing yards, and then Ladarius Willingham would have 57. Willingham would have 70 receiving yards as well, and then Mr. Simons Adams would have 33 receiving yards and a touchdown. In terms of defense, the leader was Ami Hall, looks like a lineman up in here. Number 99, he would have 11 tackles on the day. Yeah, the 6'1 senior lineman. Simons Adams would have 7, along with Felix Morales, Damian Ramirez, and Jameel Jeffrey, all having 7 tackles here. Jeffrey would also have 2 sacks in this matchup against Gateway. 3 forced fumbles here for Aurora Central, 1 from Briscoe, 1 from Fitzgerald, and 1 from Damian Ramirez. Recoveries by Ramirez, Ladarius Willingham, and Felix Morales in this game. There were 71 punt yards here from Sergio Montoya and 2 kicks, and Mr. Briscoe had 58 kick return yards in this game. So all around, very solid performance by Aurora Central, especially defensively here from Jameel Jeffrey. But looking at the score tracker just to see, yes, this was a 3 minutes to go. Gateway had the ball on the, well, they had it on the 40-yard line, pass to Jeremiah Stark onto the 1-yard line, and then it would be in for a touchdown. Oh, well, it looks like it was originally ruled out, but then the referees talked about it. Jeremiah Stark would get the score, and then Weston Rayburn would rush for the conversion with 3 minutes left in this game to give Gateway the win. Next up, we have George Washington losing to Evergreen 6-28. George Washington is the 4A squad here, so they have no stats. So ultimately, we can't say much in terms of this matchup, but Evergreen continuing to roll. They are now at 3-0, while George Washington, unfortunately, this season is 0-3. Their next game, though, will be against Conifer, which should be a little bit easier for them. Next up, Riverdale Ridge would take down the Severance Silver Knights 13-8. No stats on this one yet, but Riverdale Ridge missing Isaiah Medina for a good portion of this game. That is the starting quarterback. He got hurt there in the first half and did not play the entire second half of this game. So best wishes and hope for quick recovery there for Isaiah Medina. Next up, we have the North Glen Norsemen defeating the Thornton Trojans 45-6. In this game, Thornton only scored those 6 points in the fourth quarter. It's just not looking good for Thornton. It never really does look good for Thornton, but North Glen, good win here to bounce back. Next up, we have Pine Creek defeating the Loveland Red Wolves 41-14. No stats here for Loveland as of yet, but the Red Wolves have not been doing particularly well this season. Their one win was a 15-12 win over a 3A team, and a 3A team that they basically dog-walked last year. So it is likely that they win their league, if not come in second or third, but honestly, I am not feeling good for Loveland's chances as of right now. No stats for that Pine Creek game, by the way. Next up, we have Cheyenne Mountain defeating Coronado 30-14. Cheyenne Mountain 14 first downs to, it says 0 for Coronado, but I doubt that. We have Sam Hawker, quarterback for Cheyenne Mountain, 3 for 9 passing for 39 yards and a touchdown. 94 rushing yards and 2 scores on the ground there. Donovan Rojas with 69 rushing yards and Tyler Chris with 65. You also have Mr. Jackson with a carry for 1 yard and a touchdown. Roy Jones, 19 receiving yards, and Tyler Chris, 23 receiving yards for a touchdown. Then in terms of tackles for the Red-Tailed Hawks, the leader was McCoy Huckstep, 7 solo, 2 assists for 9 total. Cole Ruchelhoff, 7 tackles and 2 for loss. Mason Goodchall, the freshman, 5 tackles in total in this matchup. Rushoff with 1 sack in this one as well, along with Chris Bowery, who also had a sack in this game. In terms of interceptions, McCoy Huckstep again with 1 pick in this matchup. Forced fumble by Mr. Bernard. A fumble recovery each for Sam Hawker, Wyatt Boley, and Chris Bawari. And then Hawker, really, really good game kicking-wise. 6 kickoffs for an 80.8 yard average. 485 total yards there. 3 punts for 152 yards with a 50.7 yard average. One that went 65 yards, but still pretty solid there for Hawker. And then all around, 3 for 4 on PATs for Hawker, 1 for 2 on field goals. Pretty solid game for the junior there. For Coronado, though, not all hope is lost, as Mr. Buckmiller, 213 passing yards, 2 touchdowns to 1 pick. 40 rushing yards, was the leader from Colin Wolfe. And then in terms of receiving, Lyric Smith's 92 receiving yards, 2 touchdowns. Zen Groves, 55 receiving yards as well. Then in terms of defense, the leader for the Cougars was Mr. Taraborelli with 10 tackles, Oliver Bushman with 8, Braden Taylor with 6, and Wolf with 5. No sacks, but 5 total forced fumbles in this game. 1 from Groves, 1 from Vaughn Miller, 1 from Bushman, 1 from Wolf, and 1 from Taraborelli, with 1 recovery here by Wolf. In terms of punts, 1 from Nathan Manier, and 91 kick return yards from Colin Wolfe in this matchup. 1 conversion from Lyric Smith, and all around, those were all of the points that were scored in this game and the stats for Cheyenne Mountain. After that, though, we have the Skyline Falcons losing to the Frederick Golden Eagles in a battle of the birds, if you will. The Falcons lost 9-43 at Frederick, starting with Mr. Morales, the quarterback, 131 passing yards for the Falcons. Also had 44 rushing yards in this one, Morales did. The leading receiver, Jamal Gillum, 63 receiving yards. And then Mr. Harrison, 6 receiving yards on 1 catch for a touchdown in this game. Jackson Stanich, the sophomore, 7 tackles. Mr. Ayer Ordonez with 5 tackles in this game. 1 sack for Roderick Hobbs and 1 interception for Johnny McRae for Skyline. Logan Malt, 4 punts for 158 yards, a 39.5 yard average, so very good there. And Hobbs, 1 for 1 on field goal attempts, 46 yards out, so Hobbs might be someone for me to look at for the watch list. In terms of Frederick, Gavin Ishmael, 15 for 19 for 250 yards basically, 1 for 1 TD to interception. Mr. Kissinger, 4 for 5 passing for 54 yards and a touchdown. Ishmael also had 73 rushing yards and 3 scores. Tristan Dean, 29 rushing yards and a score as well. Burke Eisman, the tight end, 110 receiving yards and 3 catches for 2 touchdowns. Jezreel Palma, 63 receiving yards as well. On defense, Eddie Riley and Eric Ross each had 9 tackles. Wesley Walker and Marcus Salmeron each had 8. And then Colt Hodge had 6. Ross and then Sam Chambers each had a sack in this game. And then Tristan Dean, 3 pass deflections in this matchup. 2 kickers in this one. Dylan Norwood went 3 for 3 on PATs, and Garrett Cahoon went 2 for 2. After that, we have Palmer Ridge defeating Lewis Palmer in the Generals Cup, 48-19. Palmer Ridge, a decisive win here, but they actually started out with a deficit 13-10 in the first quarter, but then scored 14 unanswered points in the second and took it from there. I'm going to start with the Lewis Palmer here as they have less stats in. Lewis Palmer, Charles Scott, 9 tackles, 1 for loss. Mason Martin and Joey Davis, each with 7. Caden Ainsley with 6, and then Jose Bello with 5. Ainsley had a sack in this one, and then Alex Beasley and Dawson Zoll each had a pass deflection for the Rangers in this matchup against Palmer Ridge. For the Bears, Carson Campbell, 4 for 6 for 24 pass yards. Rushing-wise, Isaac Burks, 94 rushing yards and a touchdown. Javier Alvira, 93 rushing yards and a score. Noah Lighty with 82. Jackson Mabe, 72 rush yards and 3 touchdowns in this game. And then Campbell with 44. Burks was also the receiving yards leader with 16. And then on defense, Knox Tinlin, 1 pick for 20 yards. And then Rhett Armstrong, really impressive night here. He had a kickoff for 82 yards to start with. 1 field goal for 51 yards, which is already impressive. But then he had a field goal for 62 yards, tying for the third longest in the history of the entire state of Colorado, at least according to the CHSAA website. It was also 6 for 6 on PATs in this game. So a very impressive game here from Rhett Armstrong. Next up, we have Liberty losing to Denver East 49-0. The Lancers, pretty obvious, got shut out. But in terms of stats, we do have some tackle stats here. Ryan Stibbets with 10, Lucas Westerman with 9, Barrett Hall and Creed Hunt each had 6, and then Cale Profit and Cody Rudolph both had 5 for the Lancers in this game against Denver East. Not really too much here, but Creed Hunt did have a blocked field goal as well, so good job there for you, Creed, and best of luck for the rest of the season. After that, we have Monarch taking down Centaurus in a, district stadium battle, basically. When we're looking at it, no stats, but Monarch went up 14-0 in the first quarter, 7 points in the second, while Centaurus responded with 12 in the second. Centaurus would score 7 unanswered points in the third, but Mohai would score 14 in the fourth quarter to secure the win here against the Centaurus Warriors. Next up, we do have Denver South falling to the Vista Ridge Wolves 24-0. No stats for South yet, but for Vista Ridge, Zayden Stevens 11 for 23 for 126 yards, 3 interceptions, 0 touchdowns. Mr. McFarland 156 rushing yards and 2 touchdowns. Stevens with 45 and a score on the ground. The leading receiver for Vista Ridge was Deshaun Gerain. 3 receptions for 50 yards total in this game. Then on defense, Gabe Herman and Lennon Luis with 8 tackles, Mason Carter with 6, and Brennan Mosley with 5. In terms of interceptions, Jacqueline Watts had a pick for the Wolves in this game. Carson Tapia 1 punt for 40 yards. And then that's really it outside of Tapia. 3 for 3 on PATs and 1 for 1 on field goal attempts to give Vista Ridge the win in this matchup. Next up, we would have Longmont falling to Silver Creek here, the Trojans losing 20-28 to the Raptors. Silver Creek would actually start out with a 14-0 lead. Longmont would score, making it 7-21, but then Silver Creek would score. Silver Creek would score, making it 7-21, Longmont would come back, making it 20-21, but then Silver Creek would pull away here with a touchdown late in the fourth quarter, making it 28-20 here in this matchup. Colby Holmes for Longmont, 19 for 28 passing for 250 yards, 2 touchdowns to 2 picks. Joey Foote, 48 rushing yards and a touchdown in this game. Jacob Foote would catch a touchdown on 90 yards, along with Joey, who had 1 touchdown on 91 receiving yards. And on defense, the leader for the Trojans was Jaden Ramirez, the sophomore, who had 10 total tackles. Chris Pellet had 8. Logan Johnson and Ben Starkle each had 6, while Avery Amaya had 5. Amaya also had an interception, while Starkle had a pass deflection. In terms of kickoffs, Amir Gonzalez, 131 kickoff yards. Now, 147-yard punt here from, Joey Foote. And in terms of kicking, Gonzalez 2 for 3 on PATs here. Not sure where Ty Gaddis is, but we shall see what that shapes up to be for the rest of the season. But overall, good game here. Jacob Foote fastly shaping up to be a newcomer of the year contender here in 4A, but he's going to have to keep on that production, and we shall see on that. Next on the schedule, we have Air Academy, the Cadets, beating the Widefield Gladiators 44-19. Air Academy 30 points in the first quarter to Widefield 7. Air Academy would then score 14 in the third to end out their scoring for the day, but Widefield would score 6 in both third and fourth quarters to make it 19-44 in this matchup. Air Academy ended up with 350 yards of offense, 258 rushing yards, while Widefield had less total yards than Air Academy's rushing yards, though the Gladiators did have 177 passing yards in this game. Next up, though, we are going to head over to Montbello, where the Warriors traveled up to Windsor and lost to the Wizards by a score of 0-54. Yeah, just all around not a great game here for Montbello. Obviously, allowed rushing touchdowns from a lot of rushing touchdowns from Trip Thomas, but all around Montbello just not having a great day here. Next up, we have Greeley West losing to the Northridge Grizzlies 45-12. No stats on this one yet, but obviously Greeley West did not have a great day. After that, we would have Pueblo West coming out on top of the Lutheran Lions 47-21. Starting off, Gavin Lockett, 118 rushing yards, and then Ryan Siebert with 73 in this game. Brock Keck, 137 receiving yards in this game. Very good receiving performance from the senior tight end. In terms of defense, Brendan Ray, 5 tackles, Garrett O'Brien with 4. And then in the air for defense, Jason Marquez, 2 picks for 4 yards, Garrett O'Brien, 1 pick for 9, and 2 pass deflections. Those are all the stats we have so far for this game, but very good win for over a top 3A program for Pueblo West. After that, we have Pooter losing to the Fort Collins Lambkins 47-6. The Impalas only scoring those 6 points in the fourth quarter and just allowing everything, allowing the run, allowing the pass. Just not a good game here from Pooter in this matchup. And Pooter now overall are 0-4 so far on the year. Not doing too hot. Next week, though, they do have Golden, then Rocky Mountain, Greeley West. I think Greeley West should be a win, but we shall see. After that, we have the game of the week, Mesa Ridge versus Dakota Ridge. The Dakota Ridge Eagles would actually come out on top in this one, 19-14. And I'm going to start from Mesa Ridge here. Bryce Reel, 65 passing yards, a touchdown to a pick. And Reel also had 60 rushing yards. Trayvon Salas, though, would have 96 rush yards here for 1 touchdown. And then no defensive stats really, but Connor Teal, 145 kickoff yards. Xander Owansky with 98 punt yards. A long of 63, though. Caleb Chico, 59 kick return yards. And then Owansky with 2 for 2 on PATs. So solid game here from Mesa Ridge, but Dakota Ridge just had a better one. Mr. Berenson, even less passing yards, 23 total on 5 completions, 12 attempts, a long of 8. But Landon Kalsbeck, 23 carries for 183 rush yards and 2 touchdowns. Berenson, 74 rushing yards here and a score on the ground. Next one we are looking, no defensive stats have been reported yet, and along with very few special team stats. But Kobe Stewart, 1 for 2 on PATs, and Kalsbeck looks like was the differentiator here, scoring those 12 points, almost as many as Mesa Ridge had total. So good game here from the Dakota Ridge Eagles. Next up, we have 2 games on Saturday, neither of which we have stats for, but I'll go over them briefly. First, we have Golden, the Demons, defeating Thomas Jefferson 48-19 at All City Stadium. pretty cut and dry here. Golden scoring 28 points in the first half. Thomas Jefferson getting on the board and making it a close game if we only counted the second half, as Thomas Jefferson scored 19 points in the third and fourth compared to Golden's 20. So all around, solid game here for Thomas Jefferson, but great game from Golden. And then next up, Rampart defeating the Discovery Canyon Thunder, a top 3A squad, 14-10 here. Discovery Canyon just couldn't hang on with Rampart. Justice Derrickson looking like one of the best players in the state overall, but yeah, Rampart needs to get those numbers up if they want to be considered a top playoff team.
What's good, y'all? Coach V here, and I'm going to recap the September 12th, 2024 matchup between Cherry Creek and Regis Jesuit. Cherry Creek hosting Regis here. Just for some background information, Cherry Creek coming back home for the first time this season, or I guess being at home for the first time this season, as they did play 2 out-of-state games against a very good Utah team and a Nebraska team, getting their first win over that Millard North team the previous week. And in this one, they host Regis Jesuit as their first Colorado game. For Regis Jesuit, they did play a out-of-state game, I believe, but a really tough go to the start of the season. Not only are they 0-2 going into this game, but they have not scored a touchdown going into this game as well. So Regis just looking to hopefully get something going here. But, let's go ahead and hop into this game. To start, Regis Jesuit gets the ball, and at quarterback starting for them is the freshman Luke Rubley here. And it starts off with a nice little handoff to number 22 here. That would be Joe Prawn, but he's stopped for a loss by Ashton Shepherdson there. Then on second down here, Rubley gets a snap out of shotgun and throws it deep down the right sideline here, but it is incomplete. They do call it an illegal use of hands, though, on the Cherry Creek defense, so now it's 2nd and 1, second down again. They then hand it off once again to Prawn here on second down, but he is stopped for a loss by T.I. Umukais, the big defensive tackle, star defensive tackle for Cherry Creek, to go ahead and make it 3rd and 3. They then try to hand it off to Prawn again on the inside zone, but this time they get the first now on the 34. But before they could run a play on first down, there's a false start. On 1st and 15, though, they're looking to pass it, but this one just doesn't work out as number 80, Keegan Perea for Cherry Creek, gets a big sack, and I think T.I. was in there to make it 2nd and 17. Regis would then call a speed option right to number 10 here, who would get the pitch. That is, I believe, Kai Shelton, who gets the pitch here. He gets a solid gain, making it 3rd and 8, and then Cherry Creek calls their first timeout. Out of the timeout, though, Regis looking to get a first down here, but Creek sends a blitz, and Rubley is sacked by number 5, the senior Markevius Ali, and so Regis will punt it after Creek takes their second timeout, interesting enough, at the 8-minute 12 mark. But anyways, Creek, they get the ball back. This is a horrible punt, by the way. So they take over on the 45, and so here's what happens. It's an outside zone left for about 2 yards, carried by Jaden Fox, I believe. Then there's a bad pass that's almost picked, but it's luckily incomplete. On 3rd down here, Brady Vodka in at quarterback. He throws a slant to Jeremiah Hoffman. He gets them a first down. And then they go ahead and pitch it right to Jaden Fox, but there is a flag, so now it's 1st and 17. But that does set up this pass play where Vodka gets a snap, and he throws it deep on the skinny post to number 6, Maxwell Levette here, who gets a big-time touchdown to make it 6-0, soon 7-0 after the PAT with 6:45 left, as they just go ahead and take the top off here to really kick this game off. So Creek with the early lead with 6:45 left here. Now Regis, they take over on the 20, but this drive is horrible. A handoff to number 22, Prawn goes for no gain. Then they get a false start, so now it's 2nd and 15. And on second down, they hand it off again to the running back, but he's blown up by Ashton Shepherdson. He gets maybe a yard, so it's 3rd and 14. But this one goes nowhere, as on 3rd down, Rubley's looking to pass, but he gets sacked sacked by number 95 here, Jack Francis, and I believe Kate Hollis was in on that as well to go ahead and force a 3 and out. And so Creek, they take over here. Let's go ahead and fast forward a couple plays. Vodka finds Elijah Landrum Hamilton on the curl to give them their first down. Following that, they go ahead and run an RPO, and it's thrown to number 87 here. That is Ty Gotchi, I want to say, who goes ahead and gives them another first down in a row. They then hand it off to number 23. He gets about 5 yards. That's Mason Kigris on that handoff before Vodka scrambles left for pretty much no gain, but it wouldn't matter as they hand it off to number 23 again, who will get the first down, 1st and 1 here. And then fast forward a couple plays on 3rd down here, Brady Vodka, he just sneaks it in to make it 14-0 just like that with 11:55 left here. Now in the second quarter, as that one just barely bled into the second. And so Regis, they take over already down by 2 scores here, and 2 plays later, I believe on 3rd down, Rubley looking to pass. He's rolling left here. Not a lot of time, but he gets sacked. And not only does he get sacked, but he fumbles the ball here. And that's Ashton Shepherdson with that strip sack. And that ball is recovered by Cherry Creek, number 22, Matthew Lowering here, who goes ahead and sets Creek up in the red zone. On the first play, right after that, Brady Vodka gets snap, pumps, and then he just runs it right up the middle to make it 21-0 with 10:53 left. And yeah, I'm not going to lie, by this point, this game's pretty much over. Regis Jesuit goes a tough 3 and out once more after another bad sack on 3rd down here. And then Creek would go ahead and score again as Brady Vodka runs it in to make it 28-0 with 6:21 left. And this one would pretty much be over by halftime here. Creek just really controlling the line of scrimmage. And so the final score of this one would be 42-7 here. Cherry Creek just absolutely dominating. Regis would get a touchdown. It would be a Luke Rubley pass here. But I mean, they just really couldn't block this Cherry Creek defensive line at all. And on top of that, I mean, let's just go ahead and get to the reactions here. For Regis Jesuit, I don't think this system is working for Luke Rubley. We know how talented he is and whatnot, but it's just not looking super efficient against some of the top talent in the state, because they also lost to Valor, by the way, and, you know, around the country as well, as they got blown out by an out-of-state team. And so I don't know what they got to do to fix it. I don't know if they have the personnel to fix it this season, but they are in a kind of a tough spot, arguably a rebuilding year. And I will say this, it's worth noting that senior quarterback Peyton Lindell, who started last year, did go in for a couple of drives here in that second quarter before Rubley got put back in. And so I wouldn't be surprised if there's a quarterback change. We'll see. All I know is that Regis Jesuit is in a very tough spot right now after only scoring 1 touchdown in 3 games. So we'll see what happens there. For Cherry Creek, I think the toughness of their out-of-state schedule is going to really pay off here. This defense came to play, and they dominated the line of scrimmage from that first snap to the last snap here. On offense, I think it could be a little bit smoother here. I think they're still trying to find some rhythm. They got a lot of great pass catchers, but we'll see. I think it could definitely get better as the season goes on. Now, it doesn't get easier for Cherry Creek. They get to play Highland Park, which, if you're not familiar with high school football, that's a team down in Texas, the rich part of Dallas, actually. I'm very familiar with Highland Park, and they're a tough team. I thought last year they were a very underrated team in the Texas high school football playoffs. I'm sure they don't think that, but they were. I think so. And I think they're a very good team. This is arguably the toughest team that Regis is going to play this season, and that includes playoffs as well. So we'll see what happens there. I have some people some old teammates of mine who will be going to that game to tell me what they see, so that'll definitely be an interesting one. But regardless, I think Cherry Creek, them playing a tough schedule early on, especially out of state, is going to make them tougher just down the road as they continue to roll and gain confidence. But honestly, loved what I saw from them. Line looked very strong. Defense looks really strong, especially up front. And so that should be exciting if you're rooting for Cherry Creek. But there you go there. Final score of this one, Cherry Creek wins 42-7 over Regis Jesuit.
All right, this is Gideon with Playmakers Corner, here with Brady Vodka of Cherry Creek High School. Now, Brady, you're looking at tonight, your first in-state game, your first home game of the year. What kind of boost would you say this crowd provided for you compared to the past couple weeks?
Oh, it's been awesome. Obviously, the last 2 weeks have been very, very cool environment, but coming home and kind of having the whole crowd cheer for us was very cool, and they did an awesome job today. They were loud, aggressive, talked a lot, so it was awesome. It was a really cool environment.
Very good. And, I mean, they must have given you a hell of a boost because, well, I mean, not a boost, but morale boost. You were involved in all but one of the touchdowns tonight. What was your favorite moment overall from this game?
I think kind of the favorite moment was just kind of coming to the sideline after every touchdown and kind of gathering with the whole line, the whole offense. I feel like all of us played really, really good today. So kind of just knowing what we did today and kind of continuing it through this week and kind of go execute in Texas. So
that actually plays into the next question I was going to ask, because Highland Park is a solid Texas team. It's going to be this team's first time going down to the Lone Star State. How are you feeling, and what's your strategy to help this team stay composed in that tough environment?
Kind of just continuing what we've been doing this year. Kind of just starting off the whole game, kind of physical and kind of setting the momentum. And I know this team's very, very good at keeping the momentum, so it's going to be hard to stop the momentum. And kind of going into this game, I feel like all of us have a lot of confidence, so I feel like we're going to be able to go out there and execute.
All right. Thank you very much, Brady. Best of luck.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Hey, nice to meet you. This is Gideon here with Jeremiah Hoffman from Cherry Creek High School. Maya, you came into this year, believe it or not, you had a couple of doubters saying, oh, this kid's not going to be able to play in 5A. Well, through 3 games, for lack of a better term, you've got a crap ton of yards. What do you have to say to those doubters?
I just got to say, obviously don't doubt me. I'm going to do what I'm going to do, and it shows on film. It shows with everything I do, and I'm just grateful to have a good team, good QB, good friends up in here, so, just don't doubt me. Yeah.
Hell yeah. Well, after nights like tonight, nobody's going to be doubting you. You get that incredible head tap catch on the defender. Now, overall, outside of that, what was your favorite moments of tonight's game?
Most likely seeing our second-string quarterback score, because, obviously it's good to see them get in the game and do good and get hyped for themselves. And also that catch by Joe in the middle of the field where he got hit. Oh, my gosh, that was crazy. He held on to it. I was like, dang. That was pretty insane. And also Brady running in for 4 TDs was absolutely insane, too. Next freaking Kyler Murray over here.
Yeah, he was involved in all but that last touchdown, which was just insane to watch. I got some good angles on a couple of them, but overall, when we're looking at next week, you're going to be going up against the Texas squad, Highland Park, traveling to Dallas. What is, for lack of a term, what is the vibe heading into next week, and what are your thoughts on going into that environment?
Well, I've gone against Texas kids, all like 4 stars, 5 stars, and 7-on-7. So I'm confident for myself. I feel like I'm going to have a great game. We're going to show them what Colorado's all about. We're going to throw for 300 yards, run for 300 yards. It's going to be a great game all around.
All right, and last question. If you had to describe, not this game, but the game of Jeremiah Hoffman, one word, what would it be?
Explosive and underestimating. Yeah.
All right, thank you very much, Maya. Hope you have a good night.
Thank you.
All right. Yeah. This is Gideon here with T.I. from Cherry Creek High School. T.I., you were in on every single tackle in the first quarter, felt like, and if you'd have played in the second half, you would have been in on everyone after. When you're looking at this offensive line, which has some dogs on it, what were you seeing that allowed you to get in on those run plays and get the type of pressure that you were consistently seeing?
Okay, I mean, it really starts with film. You know, we start dissecting offensive linemen the second we're done with the team week before. So, I mean, we start that. We see keys through the linemen. You know, we pick up on those, especially me. You know, I have a couple hours on film, a lot. But, you know, during the game, you just kind of you fit to it, and, you know, it keeps going. And, you know, it's just like that.
All right.
That's right.
And what would you say was your overall favorite moment of tonight's game? Because you're spoiled for choice on this one.
I'll probably choose we ran a stunt, man, and, you know, we've been trying to get this down for a couple weeks now, but we finally ran it right. You know, we came around. It was a wrap, so my hand came down. I wrapped around. Running back came to block me. I threw him at the quarterback, and, you know, that was just a happy moment for us and our coaches. So, yep.
Hell yeah. And, I mean, it's between you and Cam Jensen as the most highly recruited players in your class. You just got that offer from Texas, which, by the way, congratulations on that. Beat my CSU Rams a couple weeks ago. Pretty bad. But when we're looking at you as a player and being able to not only boost yourself, but Colorado on the national level, what does it mean to you to be able to perform at the level that you do?
Oh, man, it's just a blessing. You know, I'm lucky to have people around me, a strong circle that'll push me every day to keep being successful. And, you know, with Cam Jensen, you know, I'm pretty sure he has the same circle. But, you know, that's just what you'll find from people, like, at the high caliber level. And, you know, I'm lucky to be one of those guys.
Oh, yeah. And last question. Okay, two last ones. But when we're looking at Highland Park next week, what are you most looking forward to in that matchup down in Texas?
Oh, man, I want it to be a dogfight. You know, not a lot of people love it, but shoot, it's just one thing that's just gets me going. You know, I don't want to beat a team by 40. I want to have a dogfight. So hopefully, looking forward to, you know, just being in there, duking it out, football wise.
Hell yeah. And final last question. If you were to describe your game as an individual, not just tonight, but as an individual, one word, what would it be?
Dominant. You know, I'm pretty sure every D lineman, especially nose, wants to be known as a dominant D lineman. So for me to live up to that word, that would mean a lot. So I hope people see me as dominant on the field, and, you know, that's my word.
Hell yeah. Hey, thank you, and best of luck next week and through the season.
Yes, sir. Appreciate you guys, man. You guys drive safe, all right?
Hey, you. All right, what's good, y'all? It's Coach V here, and I got your Week 3 5A rundown from all the games from Thursday, September 12th to Saturday, September 14th. If you want to hear about that Cherry Creek Regis Jesuit game, I would have just recapped it, so make sure you go ahead and check that out. I also mentioned stats on that one. Without further ado, let's go ahead and hop into it. Thursday, September 12th. Let's get it. Vista Peak played Lakewood here, and they took care of Lakewood. Pretty tough, 49-0 here. Lakewood starting a freshman quarterback who went 3 of 11 in Kasten Steinke there. And then just not much more going for them over on that side of the football. It was all Vista Peak who dominated this one here. Let me go ahead and read off their stats for them. Carson Campbell, only 3 passes, but all of them went for touchdowns. Or really, I should say 3 completions and 4 passes. Those 3 went for touchdowns there. No picks in a big-time one. Cannon Barthlow, I want to say, also had a touchdown thrown in this one. And then Isaiah Watson, Cannon Barthlow, and Larry Mosley all had touchdowns as they go ahead and take care of Lakewood 49-0. Mountain View, 3A Mountain View, that is, would beat Mountain Range, 5A Mountain Range 45-3 in a game that really wasn't close. And we had a pretty good matchup between Legacy and Grandview here. Grandview was up 20-7 with 6 minutes left in the third. Then a touchdown pass from Andrew Gardner would cut into that lead, and then they would go ahead, and that would be thrown with 4 minutes left in the third quarter. Then Tyler Anderson of Legacy would score a rushing touchdown with 9 minutes left. And then after that, a couple drives after that, a 27-yard touchdown pass from Gardner Gardner would give them the 27-20 lead, and this was after on the previous drive where a long Grandview passing touchdown was called back, which is just tough there. Tyler Anderson would then ice the game with another rushing touchdown with 3 minutes left here, and then Grandview's Blitz McCarty would score a rushing touchdown near the end, but this one would pretty much be over as Legacy comes back and beats Grandview 34-27 there. Broomfield would blast 5A Rocky Mountain 51-7. Fossil Ridge would face Columbine, and this was, it looks relatively close final score-wise, but Columbine was up 21-0 with 9 minutes left in the third before Fossil Ridge would score. But even then, they had control of that game with Fossil Ridge scoring. Final score of that one would be 35-21. James Bassinger, 27 carries for 250 yards and 3 touchdowns. A nice game from him. And so there you go. That'll wrap up the Thursday night games. Let's move to Friday here, September 13th. Friday the 13th here. Chatfield faces off versus Eagle Crest in a close one, and they would win that one 23-16. Cash Williams with a nice second half to really jumpstart this Chatfield team. He went 11 of 21, 160 passing yards, 2 touchdowns to 1 pick. Also had 31 rushing yards, which includes a quarterback sneak that would give them the lead near the end of the game there. A Playmaker of the Week candidate, if you ask me, in a big-time matchup to keep them, I believe, undefeated still, which is huge for Chatfield, and also giving Eagle Crest their first loss. Fairview would go ahead and kill Boulder 56-0 in a quotation mark rivalry game. So there you go there. Douglas County beats Rock Canyon in a tough one, 38-21. Interesting here, junior quarterback Jaden Dragna, I want to say, he will get the majority of the snaps here, but they would also play Aiden Parsons, who was very efficient. I think didn't have an incompletion when he was in, but Dragna still played great. 9 of 13, 260 passing yards, 3 touchdowns. Roman Size, the senior, 6 receptions, 230 yards, 2 touchdowns. Another Playmaker of the Week candidate. Pine Creek would go ahead and blow out Loveland 41-14. Just not close at all in this matchup here. Looking at the stats, let's talk about Pine Creek. Cam Cooper, 8 of 10, 119 yards, 2 touchdowns there. Also had 41 rushing yards and a touchdown. Caleb Petrie, 1 long touchdown for 69 yards. And then Xavier Lukes, 7 carries, 37 yards and a touchdown, as they kind of just ran away with this one. Lead receiver, by the way, was Brady Walden, the sophomore, 3 receptions for 45 yards and a touchdown. On defense for Pine Creek, Emmanuel Hill led with 7 tackles. As, like I said, they take care of Loveland 41-14. I believe this is the first time they played since that playoff game years ago, which was an absolute thriller there. But moving on here, Valor Christian, they would go ahead and beat Utah's East 30-14, absolutely dominating them. Dawson Oak, 18 of 29, 175 passing yards, 2 touchdowns. He also had 3 carries, but that went nowhere. Cash Spence, he had himself a day in this one, though. He had 8 receptions for 82 yards and a receiving touchdown. Also had 4 carries for 21 yards and a rushing touchdown, as they just take care of East 30-14, and I believe continue to remain undefeated. Westminster would take down Rangeview 41-21. Mason Kiewit, classic game here, 19 of 30, 339 yards, 4 touchdowns to 1 pick. Also had 42 rushing yards and a touchdown in that one, as they take care of business against Rangeview. Chaparral would blow out Fruta Monument here, 30-0. Will Dom, the senior quarterback, now in playing, 11 of 18, 129 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 pick. Also 2 rushes for 16 yards. Jarek Ashford, 20 carries, 115 yards, and a touchdown, as they take care of business against Fruta Monument there. Arapahoe would blow out Thunder Ridge, 48-0 here. Mitchell Price, 20 of 24, very efficient, 303 yards, 3 touchdowns. Also had 1 rush for 8 yards, if that mattered. Marcelo Jaramillo, the freshman, with a big-time game, 6 carries for 123 yards and 2 touchdowns, turning it up there. Jaden Tackett right behind him, 12 carries, 78 yards and a touchdown, as Arapahoe takes care of Thunder Ridge. Mountain Vista continues to stay undefeated against Cherokee Trail, beating them 42-0. Austin Madreski, 14 of 27, 252 yards, 4 touchdowns, 1 pick. Jack Blaze with 7 carries for 55 yards and a touchdown. Also Blaze, 2 receptions for 49 yards and 2 touchdowns, as he turned up in this game. As Mountain Vista remains undefeated, for Cherokee Trails, the struggles continue. Tyson Smith, 5 of 15, 66 yards and a pick. Brian Tucker, 83 rushing yards on 14 carries there. Just not a whole lot going for them over there at CT. So there you go. Vista Ridge would blow out now 5A, Denver South 24-0. So that one just really wasn't close there. Castleview would take care of Horizon, a whopping 51-6. This was a Horizon team playing a number of teams close here, but this just wasn't close. Derek Gordon for Horizon, 14 of 19, 214 yards, 3 touchdowns. Aaron Perry, 181 rushing yards and 2 touchdowns. Sam Harry, 4 receptions, 110 yards and a touchdown, as Castleview remains undefeated going into their big Battle of the Rock game against Douglas County. Douglas County also undefeated, by the way, going into this big-time matchup, unfortunately, though, on Thursday, which it should be a Friday game. I don't know what they're doing. Anyways, Denver East, they take care of Liberty 49-0. That's as expected. Fort Collins, they beat Intercity Pooter, not Intercity, but Intercity as in Fort Collins as well. Pooter 47-6. Cranford 11 of 14, 190 yards, 3 touchdowns, 1 pick. Jack McKeon, I want to say, that's how you say it. He had the hat trick, 13 carries, 126 yards, 3 rushing touchdowns. Levi Herbson, 6 receptions, 123 yards, and 2 touchdowns as Fort Collins rolls over Pooter. North Glen takes care of Thornton, 45-6 here. Tegan Boyson, 11 of 19, 162 yards and a passing touchdown. Josiah Easy Stevenson, 11 carries, 170 yards, 4 touchdowns in a big-time game for him in that matchup there. Nevada West, they bounce back. They beat Smoky Hill 43-0, shutting them out. Duhacek with a great game, 11 of 20, 266 yards and 4 touchdowns. Green with 49 yards there rushing and a touchdown. Caleb Gomez with 7 rushes for 36 yards. No Adrian Samala, which is interesting there. For Smoky Hill, 2 quarterbacks got snaps, both underclassmen, in Adam Strand, who was 2 of 7, and Trey Lynch, the freshman, who was 2 of 9. Just trying to figure something out there, but just another tough season for Smoky Hill there. And then finally, the last Friday game I'm going to talk about, we had Ralston Valley play Mullen here, and Ralston Valley absolutely just shuts out Mullen 27-0 in a game that just was not close here. For Ralston Valley, junior Zeke Andrews continues a pretty solid season, a breakout season. 18 of 28, 303 passing yards, 2 touchdowns. Also had 8 rushes for 52 yards. So he was their lead rusher and passer. As far as receiving goes, Levi Rios with a day. The sophomore had 7 receptions, 202 yards, and 2 touchdowns as they go ahead and they take care of Mullen in a big one. Speaking of Mullen, Code Dietrich, 9 of 23, 115 yards, and a pick. Dante Dupuch, I want to say, 10 carries, 47 yards, but just not much going for Mullen there as they are shut out in that one. And then moving on to Saturday, September 14th, we only had 2 games. We had Legend versus Prairie View and Fountain Fort Carson versus Overland. In the Legend game, that one was not close. They won 55-0 over Prairie View. Some interesting things at quarterback. Nick Fairley, 4 of 4 for 56 yards and a touchdown. Marcinich, 3 of 4 for 27 yards and a touchdown. Brooks Goosen, 3 of 4 for 27 yards there. Jaden Lawrence had a couple more carries this game, 7 carries for 77 yards and a touchdown. Jaden Skife, The sophomore, 5 carries for 65 yards. Brody Dodge, 3 for 40, as they were committed to running the ball in that one. In the Fountain Fort Carson Overland game, though, Fountain Fort Carson wins 34-14. Colton Campbell, though, some at least statistical struggles in this one. 6 of 13, 73 yards, 1 touchdown to 2 picks. Justin Jordan, though, getting 21 carries for 94 rushing yards and a touchdown. Greason Filari, the sophomore, 4 for 34. Campbell also had 5 carries for 12 yards and a touchdown as they take care of Overland. Angel Chavez got the majority of the snaps here at quarterback for Overland, 5 of 15 for 42 yards and a pick. And then Jarius Ward held to 18 carries for 42 yards as Fountain Fort Carson gets a 34-14 win over Overland. What's good, y'all? Coach V here. Let's go ahead and get into these power rankings, which are interesting. As always, these power rankings, though, are brought to you by Junkyard Training. Junkyard Training is located at 14697 East Easter Avenue in Centennial, Colorado, Suite E. They offer speed training, youth sports training, weightlifting, rehab, and recovery. That includes cryotherapy, cupping, recovery boots, and more. Visit today or call 303-521-7594. But once again, shout out to Junkyard Training as they sponsor these power rankings. Let's go ahead and hop into them. In case you don't know how they go down, just so that I cover all my bases. Myself, Cody, Gideon, Gino, and Phoenix, we rank teams in each classifications individually 1 through 10. If a team is ranked at 1 by any of us, they get 10 points. 2, 9 points, 3, 8 points, and so on and so on. After we all rank them, I add up all the points, and then the team with the most points is the number 1 team in our PMC rankings, and so forth and so forth. And so that's how I average those out. And so when you see ties, that basically means those programs got the same amount of points that, they got from getting ranked by us. So there you go there. That's how that works. That goes for 1 through 5A. Let's go ahead and hop into 1A here. In week 2, it was kind of crazy. A lot of teams just outside, not in our top 10 as far as points go and PMC rankings go, but we had a number of teams that were getting votes that were just outside, including Yuma, North Fork, Wiggins, Holyoke, and Olaf. But at 10 last week was Burlington, 9 Monte Vista, 8 Colorado Springs Christian, 7 Payton, 6 Highland, 5 Forge Christian, 4 Buena Vista, 3 Centauri, 2 Lyman, and at number 1 was Ray. Now this week, couple different things here. Only 2 teams just outside our top 10 officially, and that is Olaf and Holyoke here. Phoenix, he had Olaf ranked at 10 last week. They're still ranked here, but he said no score provided from their game, which that was as of Sunday, September 15th, 10 a.m. So no changes as of now from him. So there you go there. Phoenix would also rank Holyoke at 8 personally. He said close loss to a 3A Kansas school, so not the worst there. And then I believe the only other one, yeah, there you go. He was the only one to vote for Holyoke and Olaf there. So for now, they are just outside our PMC rankings. But going to our official ones, starting at 10, we got Highland, who does move down a couple of spots here. Cody had this to say about Highland. Highland's first loss was still technically only by 2 scores against a solid Wiggins squad, but getting shut out still stinks. Gideon has Highland now at 8. He said this still better than most of 1A. Even though they were shut out, it was within 2 scores, so the defense is still strong here. Gino had this to say about Highland. Shutout to Wiggins is a little discouraging, but they will still stay in my top 10. He has them right at 10 personally. And then Phoenix has Highland at 9. He said tough loss to a good Wiggins squad. So we all kept Highland in our top 10, but they definitely moved down a couple spots, which is reflected here as they are in our 10th spot PMC rankings wise to start. Now, tied at 8, we have 2 teams in Colorado Springs Christian and Yuma here. Yuma moves up from being previously unranked. Colorado Springs Christian was ranked at 8 last week. Let's start with Colorado Springs Christian. Cody said this: their game was the best contest against a solid Woodland Park team, but if the Lions don't get a win, it's going to be difficult to talk myself into a top 10 spot this time next week. Gideon said this about them: I am very skeptical about CSCS, but they did the best out of everyone I had in this range last week against a playoff hopeful in Woodland Park. Gino had this to say about them: 3-point loss to Woodland Park is not ideal, but making that a close game is quite impressive nonetheless here. And then I do not believe Phoenix had Colorado Springs Christian ranked. So with all that being said, they still stay at 8 after a tough loss to a 2A team in Woodland Park. But tough in a way that it was close. Now the other team that is now at 8 is Yuma, who was previously unranked. I've always had them at 7. I've had them at 7 for like the last 2 weeks. So I'm just putting that out there. Cody had this to say about Yuma. He said this team surges during their bye week, and why? Well, most of the teams in front of them got embarrassed, whether it was a blowout or a shutout. And Chase County is looking decent, so the strength helps them out there. So there you go. Gideon had this to say about Yuma. The Yuma blasted a Roaring Fork team and are looking potentially dangerous. Just need to see them against more in-state talent. Gino had this to say about Yuma. With the amount of teams that lost in the back half of the top 10, Yuma gets blessed by being ranked at 8 this week, personally, for him, that is. And then I do not believe Phoenix has Yuma ranked either. But, welcome to the top 10, Yuma. Speaking of welcome to the top 10, at 7, we got Wiggins, who is moving up from being previously unranked here. I have them at 9 personally. Cody has them at 7. He said this: I'm going to just transfer Highland spot straight to Wiggins for their close but still shutout win. Gideon says this: shut out a very motivated Highland team. So there you go. Gino said they shut out a Highland team that I previously had ranked at 6. And then Phoenix said this about Wiggins: big wins on the road against Meeker and hosting Highland in the past 2 weeks to bounce back from the Forge shutout. So there you go there as Wiggins moves into our top 10. Now at 6 is Monta Vista, who moves up a couple spots here. I have them ranked the highest here at 3, and I believe it's been that way only for a week. I think I had them at 4 before, but Cody has them at 6. He said this about Monta Vista: surprisingly, all of the teams in front of the Pirates lost, and they win big, putting up 43. Gideon had this to say about them: good win over a team I thought was top 10. I may have overreacted to that Alamosa game. Gino said this about Monta Vista: they made light work of a solid North Fork squad. And then Phoenix has Monta Vista ranked now. He said, good win against a top Western Slope team. Agreed. Now, our top 5 is pretty much all the same as last week here. At 5 is Forge Christian. Cody had this to say about them: this team has not been fully tested yet, and that is why I am slow playing anything beyond this top 5 spot. I am very, in all caps, interested to see how their game against number 1 in 2A Kent Denver goes next week to get a good rating on them. Gideon had this to say about Forge Christian. He said 3 straight 40-point wins. However, the question is how they will do against the top team in 2A. Kent Denver is huge, so we'll see what the Fury are made of. Gino had this to say about Forge. Forge Christian finally gave up a touchdown. Maybe they're not completely indestructible, ? And then Phoenix said this: big win against a former league opponent back when I was playing in 2A, reflecting just a little bit there. Now at 4 still is Buena Vista here, who stays right here. Cody had this to say: I'm not going to drop the Demons a ton for losing to a team that was only 1 spot behind them. It stinks they couldn't get a score with 10 minutes to go in the game, but this is a learning experience so long as they actually learn from it against other quality opponents this season. A postseason rematch would low-key go crazy and would be something I think I would make the drive for if I can. Gideon had this to say: barely lost to a well-rounded Centauri team. The Demons have a bye and then a chance to bounce back against a Lyman. The question is, will they? Gino says this about BV: all 3 of Buena Vista's games this year has been 1 score. Not sure what to do with that. So there you go there. And then Phoenix said a tough loss against a very good Centauri team that kept it close. So yeah, I had Buena Vista move down 2 spots. That's just a tough go. They lose, so they move down 2 spots as other teams win and move on. So it just is what it is. It would be an interesting matchup though moving forward. I think that's a very compelling 1A matchup in my opinion. At 3 still is Centauri here. Cody said this: the Falcons struck early in the fourth quarter and then held on for the remainder of the game. This is critical, especially considering a touchdown and PAT would have meant a loss, but they get another gritty, high contested W. And so there you go. That's what Cody had to say about Centauri. Gideon had this to say: great win over Buena Vista, and this team is on a roll. I think this team will make a deep run. Agreed there. Gino said this: a statement win over Buena Vista secures their top 3 spot in my rankings, as they're at 3. And then Phoenix says good win against Buena Vista. Yeah, that's a huge win against Buena Vista. That's a team that was directly ahead of them, I want to say, in some of our rankings. But in our PMC rankings, they stay right here ahead of them at 3, defending their spot. Now at 2 still is Lyman. They did not play this week, so Cody put down DNP. Gideon said no game. Gino said DNP. Phoenix said DNP, so nothing really to say there. Ray, they did play, I'm pretty sure, this week. And that's your 1 spot team here in our PMC rankings in 1A. Cody said this: they beat Scott at home, which is a program the Eagles have historically struggled with, and they did so handedly. It made me wonder if they are ready to overcome another long-time struggle this year. Gideon said this: still dominant. Gino said Ray stays dominating so far this season. And then Phoenix says dominating performance against Scott City from Kansas. I do want to go back to what Cody said. That is very good. And I think there should be optimism there that they were able to beat a team like that by a lot. Because, yeah, that is a team that they have struggled with in the past. And so I still have them at 1. Until they lose, they're not going to move down. It's just what it is. And this is a very talented team. But, we'll see what happens going on here into week 4. But once more, your week 3 1A power rankings goes. Olaf and Holyoke just outside. At 10, Highland. Tied for 8th is Colorado Springs Christian and Yuma. 7, Wiggins. 6, Monte Vista. 5, Forge Christian. 4, Buena Vista. 3, Centauri. 2, Lyman. And at number 1 is Ray. All right, now moving on to 2A here. Last week, a little bit of a mess in our top 10 rankings. We had 4 teams getting votes that were just outside our top 10 in Basalt, Lamar, Alamosa, and Woodland Park. But at 10 was Strasburg. 9 was University. 8, La Junta. Tied for 6th was Elizabeth and Resurrection Christian. 5 was Delta. 4, Berthoud. 3, Wellington. 2, TCA. And at number 1 was Kent Denver. Now, while there wasn't a whole lot of movement in the top 5 once more this week, none at all actually, there definitely was a lot in our last 5 here. Starting with just out, it's Woodland Park here. Gideon voted for them. He said this: they keep winning but needs to work on not blowing leads. Almost blew a 21-0 lead against CSCS. So yeah, there you go there. But they are just outside for us. At 10 in our PMC rankings, though, now is Lamar, who was not ranked before or getting votes before. Or sorry, they got 1 vote before by me. So there you go. But now they're in our top 10 here. Cody said this: the Thunder kept rolling, getting a big dub over Bennett, and should be undefeated by the time they'll have to really prove their worth in 2 weeks on the road in La Junta, which is always a good game, honestly. Gideon doesn't have Lamar ranked it. He actually has them just outside at 11. He said this: they need to beat La Junta before I rank them, so straight up there. Gino says this about Lamar: undefeated and have been putting up a ton of points to start the year. And then Phoenix has Lamar at 10. He says remains undefeated after a blowout win against Bennett. So there you go. Now at 9 is Elizabeth, who does move down a couple spots here after their loss, which wasn't too bad here. But Cody said this: he said, not ideal, but not going to completely sink the Cardinals for losing on the road in a tough environment, better than a handful of squads do or will. Gideon says this: ended up losing by 15 to TCA, but they still played the Titans well. Need to see how the Cards do against Pagosa before I discount them. Gino says this about Elizabeth: I think that Elizabeth competed well against TCA, so I'm not going to drop them this week, especially after so many teams in the top 10 lost. And then Phoenix said still a good squad that gave a good fight to TCA. And yeah, absolutely gotta agree there. They didn't get blown out by TCA. Let's make that completely clear there. Played him close. That does mean a couple different plays or drives got to go differently in the future for them to beat them, and I don't think that is a huge gap to close. So for now, they stay in the top 10, but on the downswing, though. Now, at 8 is University, who moves up a spot here. They did not play this week, so Cody said DNP, Gideon said DNP, Gino said DNP, and Phoenix said DNP here. But they basically move up because Elizabeth lost. Now, at 7 is another team that was previously unranked, but getting votes, and that is Basalt here. I have them at 10 now. Cody has Basalt at 7. He said this with the point differential being 117 to 27 after a big win over 3A Glenwood Springs. The Basalt Longhorns come surging into the top 10. The biggest hump always remains to be the postseason. But until then, they skyrocket in these rankings. Gideon says this, Basalt maybe the top 10 opponent Delta needs. The Longhorns got a dominant win over Mason Markovich's Glenwood Springs, but haven't snagged a top 10 win in a while. The Cougars may not be top 10, but Evergreen has performed well this year, so the Cougs will be a good challenge for the Longhorns here. And I have to actually agree with that. Very underrated team. Gino had this to say about Basalt. A nice start to the season here for them. That game against Delta in a couple weeks is starting to seem like a must-watch. And then Phoenix says impressive win against 3A Glenwood Springs. So yeah, Basalt, they finally move up here for me. I mean, I'm pretty sure they're undefeated, and they've been winning handedly. We'll see how the rest of the season goes, and how these top 10 matchups go, though. Now, at 6 is Strasburg, who moves up a couple spots after debuting in the 2A top 10 last week here. Let's start with Phoenix, actually, talking about Strasburg. He said, took care of business at home against La Junta. Gino said, that statement win over La Junta has Strasburg flying up my rankings to 6 this week. Gideon has Strasburg at 5. He said fitting right into 2A, fulfilling the annual promise. La Junta gets beat by a team that people underestimated. My bad. And the Berg has a cakewalk next week against the Academy. Agreed there. Cody had this to say about Strasburg. These fellas ain't go nowhere, but up proving themselves week in, week out as a threat here in 2A. He actually wrote down 1A, but I think he meant 2A. So there you go there. Strasburg in my personal top 10. They move up there for the first time this year as other teams lose. And I think it's fitting. They have a great culture over there. I wasn't sure how it would fit going into 2A, but it's fit really well. They've adapted. They're playing good football. Have a very balanced offense, I feel, or a relatively balanced offense here for 2A, which is not bad at all. Keep an eye on Strasburg as they are emerging as a dark horse. Now, our top 5 remains the same here, which I would say is probably a group of contenders. At 5 is Delta here. Cody, or let me go with Phoenix here, who is the highest on Delta. He said shutout through a rifle as the road team. Gino said the 2A state championship rematch was quite the dud after Delta slaughtered Rifle 49-0. Gideon said the reigning champs came out to play against Rifle, but the Bears are a shadow of what they once were. I want to see Delta against a top 10 opponent before I can justify any higher. Cody says, boy, the gap between Delta and Rifle gets bigger every time they play. That's tough. And then I have Delta moving up 2 spots at 6. A win is a win. Gotta give them their credit. They're still the defending champs. At 4, though, still is Berthoud. Cody said shutout dub over a nearby school. Gideon says 1 through 4 is basically a tie for me. Gino said this about Berthoud. 26-point shutout over Weld Central was not easy to do, but Berthoud sure made it look easy. And then Phoenix said shutout win against Weld Central. In my opinion, Weld Central is a very underrated team. They got some players there like Marcelo Rossi, who I think is big time. And so for them to do what they do, that's huge in my opinion. But I mean, every team won this week, though, ahead of them, so there you go. Or they didn't play, which is the case with Wellington, who's still at 3. DNPs across the board here, so there you go, nothing to say there. At 2 is still TCA. Cody said Drew Brown put on a Playmaker of the Week-esque performance against a good team to secure the close win over a solid Elizabeth team at home and show that TCA can weather storms. Also, even though TCA still ran it quite a bit, this feels like a more concentrated effort on a balanced offense that will do them wonders come league or postseason. Gideon says Drew Brown is the truth, and that's it. Gino says still a top 2 team in the state after taking care of a tough Elizabeth squad. And then Phoenix says good win against a solid Elizabeth group. Agreed. Now at number 1 still is Kent Denver here. Cody just said 1 big. Gideon said 1. Gino said nothing but dominance so far out of the Sun Devils. Not dominoes, dominance. And then Phoenix still doesn't have Kent Denver ranked. Or sorry, no, he does have Kent Denver ranked. Just kidding. He has them at 4 though. Got the job done against a 1A team that lost to an 8-man school early in the season. So there you go. That's our 2A rankings. Outside is Woodland Park. At 10 is Lamar. 9, Elizabeth. 8, University. 7, Basalt. 6, Strasburg. 5, Delta. 4, Bertha. 3, Wellington. 2, TCA. And at number 1, still for now, is Kent Denver. Moving on here, though, to 3A. A little bit of a crazy week. This is, I'm pretty sure, our only rankings where our teams, almost every team except for 1, has moved up or down. I think in all of our rankings across the classifications, we've had more than 1 team stay the same. And this one, a lot of movement. So last week, Harrison was just outside, with 10 being Holy Family, 9 Wheat Ridge, 8 Discovery Canyon, 7 Thompson Valley, 6 Windsor, 5 Pueblo Central, 4 Meade, 3 Roosevelt, 2 Green Mountain, and at number 1 was Lutheran. This week's a little bit different. Just outside right now is Wheat Ridge here. I am the only one who ranked Wheat Ridge, which I'll talk about in a minute. And then Cody ranked Pueblo East here. He did not rank Pueblo East. Gino ranked Pueblo East at 10. He said winning the cannon in front of that crowd shows to me that Pueblo East isn't afraid of anything. So there you go there, but they are just outside right now. For Wheat Ridge, I mean, they continue to win against in-state opponents here. They lost to Hayes, who went 7-3 last year. So that's a good squad here, but, you know, they do dip here with other teams winning against slightly more competitive opponents that are also in-state. So I understand them being dropped. I did not drop them, though. So we'll see what happens moving forward. But at 10, we have a tie. We have Discovery Canyon and Palisade here. Let's start with Palisade. Cody voted for them. He said, looking through losses of the other 2, I have just out. The Dogs played the best loss, in my opinion, and hung tough against other good teams. They continue their Western Slope work against the Demons this week. That should let us know if they are more of a serious team or a fringe team who hangs around. Gideon said this about them. Montrose is just that good. Rez is a solid school and program, so if the Bulldogs beat Durango, they are firmly in my top 10. And then Phoenix said this about Palisade. Good win against Rez Christian. So there you go. Palisade is just outside for me, though. Now, Discovery Canyon is also tied with them. I have them at 8 here. And then Gideon has them at 1. He said Rampart is a solid team, and to play them this close is good, but Disco definitely has a good chance of winning this game and probably should have. I have them ranked at 8. I mean, they played a team in Rampart who's a playoff team in 4A. They got some good size over there. They lost 14-10. I don't think it's a red flag yet because they still played them close, but when they have played teams that have had more size, like a Central or a Rampart, they have struggled a little bit, so definitely something to keep in mind, but I'm not dropping them just yet here. So there you go. They do fall, as I want to say, Palisade was previously unranked, so they move up technically. Discovery Canyon drops from 8 to 10. But they're tied at 10. So we'll see what happens moving forward as DCC clings to 10 and Palisade makes an appearance here. Now at 9 is Holy Family, who moves up a spot here. They did not play this week, so DNP from Cody. Gideon did not have them ranked. And then I want to say Gino has them ranked here at 7. But that's a DNP there. And that's it. Only Gino and Cody voted for Holy Family. But they technically move up one spot with a team losing. So there you go. Now, at 8 is Green Mountain, who falls really far from being 2 last week, from 2 to 8. This is what Phoenix had to say about Green Mountain, who he has at 8 now. He said, tough loss to 2 3A teams, has Green Mountain bordering the rankings line. Gino says, I'm not sure how you lose to Pomona like that, but two straight losses for Green Mountain has them hanging on for dear life in my top 10. Gideon says this about Green Mountain. What happened? I know the line wasn't bigger than yours, but geez, this team needs to turn it around and quickly to stop the slide. Cody says, how the mighty have fallen. I'm eager to see how this squad responds after getting punched in the mouth this past week and try to bounce back in a 2-game skid. I'm not going to lie, I don't think Green Mountain was that much smaller than Pomona. But I do think that their offense showed signs of weaknesses in week 1 against Windsor. They didn't play the perfect game, so they're still trying to figure some things out. I think they still have a lot of talent. You just can't count out Green Mountain like that. They have a good coach. They'll figure something out moving forward here. But against top 10 teams, they can't lose again. They can't lose to another unranked team again. That's for sure. Now at 7 is Thompson Valley, the only team that stays here. Gideon says the Eagles kept winning. A good win over Timnath showed grit. The Eagles continued to have a very stingy defense. Cody said they took a little longer than I would have hoped to put this game away, but eventually slammed the door shut and got a win. Phoenix said good win against Timnath on the road. And then Gino says very strong start to the year after they beat Timnath 24-9 on Friday. I'm kind of with Cody here. I kind of thought they would put them away sooner. The fact that they didn't is definitely a little bit of a red flag. So I'm not moving them up or down in my personal rankings. We'll see what happens, though. Now, at 6 is Pomona, who was not ranked before. Cody has them at 3. He said, lost by less to Pueblo West than Lutheran, and just sent a wake-up call through Green Mountain to skyrocket into my top 3. Overreaction or ahead of the curve, only time will tell. Gideon says this about Pomona. That result against Pueblo West looks much better now. Green Mountain is genuinely a good team, so I have no idea how Pomona is going to be. The Mountain View game is going to be ridiculous. Gino says Pomona might be back after they barely lost to Pueblo West on the road last week, and then they manhandled Green Mountain this week. Phoenix says good win against a very good Green Mountain team. Yeah, agreed here. They're fitting in really well into 3A, I think, and that's very good for that program. So, love seeing them succeed. We'll see what happens moving forward, though. Now, at 5, Windsor moves up a spot compared to last week. Cody said this, the Wizards slide doesn't have as much to do with them as it does with the Panthers surge as in Pomona. He said nice 50-piece this past week, though. Gideon says this about Windsor, 50-point win over a 4A squad in Montbello. It is Montbello, but the Wizards are looking good even without Sam Cooper. I think Montbello is a little bit better than that personally, but that's just me. Gino says this, complete domination of Montbello puts Windsor back in my top 3. And then Phoenix says good shutout win, and so far boasts a better record than Green Mountain as of right now, which I agree, which is interesting. Now, at 4 is Pueblo Central, who continues to climb. Cody said this, handle business against an inferior opponent. So there you go. Gideon says the Wildcats continue their dominant run run with a big win over Alamosa. Amari Brown is my current pick for 3A MVP. Gino says this about Central, 43-point shutout over Alamosa is nice, but they fall one spot in my rankings after Windsor destroyed Montbello. And then Phoenix said this about Central, who he has at 2, remains undefeated after a dominate shutout to Alamosa and boost in rankings with Lutheran and Green Mountain losses, which I gotta agree with right there. Central taking care of business over there. And I think you gotta feel good about that as of right now. I think Alamosa's not that bad of a team either, so that is still a good sign. Now at 3 is Lutheran, who drops a couple of spots here. Phoenix says this about Lou High. He says first loss to a really good 4A school in Pueblo West. Gino says they lost the 1 spot after getting beat badly by Pueblo West, but that's a very tough game to win on the road against a top 4A team. Gideon says this, lost to a top 5 team in 4A, but this was a bad loss still. These guys need to shape it up. And then Cody says this, not the best loss to a seemingly vulnerable Pueblo West team, but I cannot be convinced Lutheran is not still one of the best teams in 3A. Now, while I don't think Pueblo West is vulnerable, I think that's probably a win you still could have won. I felt like they matched up well. Offensive line-wise, they're way bigger than their defensive line. So if it comes down to a physicality thing, it's not good, but they got to get it figured out. There's a lot of good teams that could run the ball, especially in 3A. So we'll see what happens there. And if they could force teams to pass, I think they have a good defense that could stop the pass. So we'll see, but hopefully they bounce back next week. Now at 2 is Meade, who rises a couple spots. I still have them at 1. Cody has them at 2. He said preemptively moving this team up to 2 once they go 3-0 this coming weekend and being one of the last top-ranking undefeateds. Gideon said DNP not losing to Greeley West. Gino says DNP. Phoenix says DNP. Yeah, they should probably beat Greeley West here, but they continue to rise here. I really like Meade. I think they have an elite front 7, and they're very good. They got some good pieces on offense that get the job done. Be on the lookout for them. I think this could be another repeat of their state championship run. Speaking of state championships, we have Roosevelt here, a former state championship, now back at 1, up 2 spots. I have them at 2. Cody has them at 1. He said the Rough Riders smack Pondo and remain undefeated. Gideon says huge win over a playoff-bound 4A Ponderosa. I don't know how they keep doing it, but Milo Pascal is looking like a top running back and potential All-PMC player. Gino says 2-0 against 4A teams to start the year and still unbeaten despite a tough 3-game stretch to start the season. And then Phoenix says big win over 4A Ponderosa. Yeah, I mean, I kind of expected them, after watching Ponderosa 2 weeks ago, I expected them to beat them, but to beat them like this, that's definitely a statement here. But I think Meade is also undefeated, so I got to roll with them for now. But I do like Roosevelt. This is a tough race here in 3A, but you got some really good contenders. Honestly, what it's going to come down to is who can get hot at the right time come playoff time and league play. So we'll see what happens there. But once more, your PMC rankings go Wheat Ridge and Pueblo East just outside. Tied at 10 is Discovery Canyon and Palisade. 9 Holy Family. 8 Green Mountain. 7 Thompson Valley. 6 Pomona. 5 Windsor. 4 Pueblo Central. 3 Lutheran. 2 Meade. And at number 1 now is Roosevelt. And by the way, every week, this is kind of crazy, but every week has been a different team at number 1 here in 3A, which I think is the first time ever that has been the case. So there you go. Now moving on to 4A here. Last week we had Thomas Jefferson and Taurus just outside. Tied at 9 was Ponderosa and Riverdale Ridge. 8 Vista Ridge, 7 Heritage, 6 Dakota Ridge, 5 Pueblo West, 4 Montrose, 3 Palmer Ridge, 2 Mesa Ridge, 1 Broomfield. This week it is a little bit different here. There is one team that is just outside here, and that's Grand Junction. Gideon has them at 9. He said 3-0 with 2 of those wins being in 4A. Which they're also in 4A. But he said if they beat Fruta and Durango, there's a good chance the Tigers will win out. We'll see about that. So there you go. But he's the only one who voted for Grand Junction. At 10, though, is Monarch. I believe all of us except for Gideon has them ranked. Cody said this: the brutalizing last week still stings, but bouncing back with a 30-point performance feels great, and this team could still be in the running for a bye depending on how the chips fall down the stretch. Gideon has Monarch just outside at 11, but he said this: good win against Centaurus, but need to see a win over a playoff team. Fair enough. Gino says this: beat a sneaky, unbeaten Centaurus squad to re-enter my top 10. Phoenix says got back on track with a win over Centaurus. So there you go. Monarch moving back up, or I guess not back up here. I don't think they were ranked. Or yeah, they were ranked in week 1 here. But last week they were not ranked here. So now they're back in the top 10 after a 1-week break. Now at 9, still is Riverdale Ridge here. Cody says just barely beating Severance isn't the most convincing tryout for the top 10, but a win is a win. They remain undefeated. Gideon says with Isaiah Medina hurt, I am extremely worried about this team, but they have performed well so far. Gino says only beat Severance by 5, but they stay put at 9 this week since they're still undefeated. Phoenix says got the win in a close matchup against 3A Severance. Yeah, I think there's definitely some worry here, but we're going to wait until they lose before we move them down, I think, or until there's a very concerning close game that shouldn't be close, so we'll see about that. At 8 is Vista Ridge. Cody said same as above, where drop is more about Dakota Ridge than Vista Ridge, who gets a nice shutout win. Gideon said the Wolves have beat teams both in and out of state. Their first real test is going to be against Columbine. The Rebs will probably win, but this will show what VR is made of. Gino says shutout win over Denver South, keeps Vista Ridge at the 8th spot this week. And then Phoenix says undefeated after shutting out 5A Denver South. So for now, they stay at 8. Now at 7 is Mesa Ridge, who drops 5 spots here. Let's start with Phoenix. He said loss to Dakota Ridge puts them behind in the rankings. Gino says after almost losing to Northfield last week, Mesa Ridge finally loses one to a very solid Dakota Ridge team. Mesa Ridge has some things to figure out before they move back into my top 3. He has them at 7 right now, though. Gideon said the Northfield game was a cause of concern, but it's time to hit the alarm bell. Mesa Ridge needs to adjust before they have to deal with a top 5 opponent at home. Cody said, I'm not going to completely drop Mesa Ridge off a cliff, losing a close one on the road, but clearly the strategy for Dakota Ridge was to play keep away from this offense and to see that defense couldn't stop the run and get the offense the ball for more plays is concerning, as they ran only 37 to Dakota Ridge's 60 total plays of offense. So, yeah, definitely a little bit of a concern against Northfield, but they still beat them. This one isn't as bad. I have Dakota Ridge just ranked ahead of Mesa Ridge in my personal rankings here. Dakota Ridge is a good squad. I don't think there's any issue with that, but this is probably a win Mesa Ridge should have won here. They don't have Kobe Dooley. I don't know when he comes back. If anything, it probably will be after this week if he's not out for the year because of transferring rules. But he hasn't been playing either, and I think that is kind of a big deal. When they get him back, this offense will look different. So there you go. Now at 6 is Dakota Ridge, who basically just stays right here at 6. Starting with Phoenix, he said, got the win over Mesa Ridge in a tight matchup. Gino says Dakota Ridge has had a rough schedule to start the year, but they showed that they don't care after beating top-ranked Mesa Ridge this week. Gideon says beat a team I formerly had ranked at 1 in Mesa Ridge, but just barely. Cody said pulling off a close win and holding the Grizzlies' offense to 14 points is actually huge enough to warrant a top 5 ranking. And then, yeah, I have them moving up 1 spot to 5, but they don't move in our PMC rankings. They're still at 6 technically here. I mean, this is a stacked squad here. They got a lot of talent, a good offensive line, in my opinion here, even if some people in the pod don't think so. But I think they're pretty good for 4A, so I think they're going to continue to roll. We'll see, though, what happens moving forward. Now, at 5 is Heritage, who moves into our top 5, up 2 spots compared to last week. Cody said this about Heritage. The Eagles played like they were angry. The drop has nothing to do with them and just with Dakota Ridge rising in his personal rankings. Gideon has Heritage here, beat Northfield worse than Mesa Ridge did, and bounced back well from their loss to Arapahoe. Gino said this about Heritage. Heritage showed Mesa Ridge how you're supposed to beat a team like Northfield as a top 10 team. And then finally, Phoenix says this about Heritage. Got the win, but I just haven't seen anything that gives them a rise in the rankings. I believe I have them at 8 still here. I mean, they beat a team who they're supposed to beat. That Arapahoe game still kind of sits with me, but because of other rankings, they do move up here into our top 5. Now, tied at 3 is Pueblo West and Montrose. Montrose was at 3 last week. West now moves up a couple spots with their win. Let's start with Cody. This win felt somewhat surprising, at least in the way they won and eased some of my nerves. But all about the Cyclones. That does not make much sense, but that's what he wrote. Gideon said this. One of the few undefeated squads at 4-0 and beat a top 5 team in 3A Lutheran there. Gino said this, Cyclones got a nice win over Lutheran at home to move into my top 5. And then Phoenix says this about Pueblo West, dominating win over a very disciplined Lutheran squad, keeps them in top 3. I think that's a really good win over Lutheran. That might be their best win in years. So there you go. I'm high on Pueblo West. We'll see what happens moving forward, though. Now, at 2 is Palmer Ridge, who rises a spot here. Cody says, won the rivalry game for the Battle of Monument handedly. Gideon says, I don't know how the Bears keep doing it, but their talent development system needs to be studied. Yes, they do. Best in the state, in my opinion. One of the best in the state. Gino says the Grizzlies won the Battle for Monument, as expected, and move up to the 2 spot this week after Mesa Ridge loss. And then Phoenix says remains undefeated after their win against Lewis Palmer. Yeah, I think we all knew they were going to beat LP, but with teams losing, they move up, which I think is fair. Now, at number 1, which is unanimous here, is Broomfield. It stays the same here. Cody says 50 Burger. Gideon says this team doesn't strike the fear of God in me yet, but the Eagles are winning over good teams and beat a 5A team. I need to see how they do against Erie before I say anything about the state chances, but they've performed well. Gino said 51 points on Rocky Mountain's head to stay undefeated. And Phoenix said put up a big win against 5A Rocky Mountain. I'm just going to say this. I don't think Rocky Mountain is that good of a 5A team. I don't think they're a playoff team. So it's good to see them take care of business. And that's all you could say. But right now they stay at number 1. So there you go. Those are our 4A rankings. Just outside is Grand Junction. 10 is Monarch. 9 Riverdale Ridge. 8 Vista Ridge. 7 Mesa Ridge. 6 Dakota Ridges. So all the ridges there except for Palmer Ridge. At 5 is Heritage, tied at 3 is Pueblo West and Montrose, 2 Palmer Ridge, and at number 1 still is Broomfield. Okay, now moving on to 5A. Last week, Arvada West and Legend were just outside. But at 10 was Ralston Valley, 9 Fairview, 8 Castleview, tied at 6th was Chatfield and Eagle Crest, 5 was Valor Christian, 4 Denver East, 3 Mountain Vista, 2 Cherry Creek, and at 1 was Columbine. Now, going into week 3, Arvada West and Legend are still just outside here getting votes. I have them at 8, and then I believe Gino has them at 10. He said, shut out Smoky Hill as expected. The Wildcats have a tough league schedule, so things will definitely start to get interesting there. And I got to agree, I mean, this is still a very talented squad, and they do run a good system. So I'm not out on them yet here, but we'll see. Like Gino said, tough league schedule. Things are going to get reviewed here soon. So we'll see what happens moving forward. Now, I think the only one voting for Legend right now is Phoenix. He said got that shutout against Prairie View to bounce back from that 2-point loss to Columbine last week. But other than that, nobody else is ranking Legend in their top 10. So there you go. Now at 10 is Fairview, who does move down a spot here. Cody has them at 10. He didn't say anything. Gideon has them at 10. He said did as expected against Boulder. The win over A West is keeping them here, as most other teams just beat better opponents this week. Gino has Fairview just outside of his rankings here, and then I do not believe Phoenix, or sorry, he does have them here. Phoenix has them at 6. He said curb stomped Boulder. So there you go. That is a rivalry game, so I guess it matters in a sense, but I cannot remember the last time this rivalry has been close, and I don't think it has ever been close, actually, since we've started covering the podcast, or doing the podcast. So there you go. Now at 9 is Ralston Valley, who scoots up just a spot here. Cody said nice shutout win over Mullen in a game that didn't have to be so exciting this week. Agreed. Gideon says the Mustang defense posted a shutout against Mullen, but they have to play Valor in 2 weeks. This will show what the Stangs are made of. Agreed there. Gino said 27-point shutout over Mullen secures their 9th spot. And then Phoenix does not have Ralston Valley ranked in his top 10. But yeah, I mean, I'm just going to keep saying this. I really didn't think they were going to reload this fast, but they have. Zeke Andrews is the truth here. Definitely a watch list player. And they got some nice young receivers over there who are putting in work. So got to give them a lot of credit here. Now at 8 is Eagle Crest, who was tied with Chatfield. They moved down 2 spots after that tough loss to Chatfield. Cody says this. 1-score loss to another top 6 team does not completely get you kicked out of the club. I am glad the Raptors actually scheduled some good out-of-league opponents to better gauge themselves, and will do so this week against Denver East. Super excited about that one, by the way. Gideon said this about Eagle Crest. No need to press the panic button, and it wasn't a bad loss. The Eagles just need to regroup. Agreed. Gino said this about Eagle Crest. 1-score loss to Chatfield will keep the Raptors in my top 10, but they need to bounce back quickly next week against East to stay in these power rankings. And then Phoenix does not have Eagle Crest ranked in his top 10. They were at 9 before, so they drop out just for him. So there you go. Another team that's very talented but does slide just a little bit. We'll see what happens, though, moving forward. Now, at 7 is Castleview, who does scoot up a spot. Cody said posting a 50-burger against a team that almost been a trap game for their other 5A peers puts the SaberCats in a solid spot here at 6. Gideon says the SaberCats are the first team that Horizon hasn't played close, and this team is looking good. The only problem, no playoff quality opponents yet. The battle for the rock is likely going to be the deciding point this season. I could definitely agree with that. It's going to be a great game. I wish it was on a Friday so we could go, but it's on a Thursday, so we can't. Now, Gino says this about Castleview. Horizon is a sneaky team, so for Castleview to beat them as badly as they did is pretty crazy. I don't think it's that crazy, but it's definitely a confidence booster to take care of them like this. And then Phoenix says dominant win on the road against Horizon with a boost in the rankings with Eagle Crest losing. So there you go. At 6 is Chatfield. The next 3 or so are the same, but at 6 is Chatfield, who stays right here at 6. Cody says the Chargers are 3-0 and get a close win over a solid Eagle Crest squad, so they will take their former spot. A little concerning to see Brock Narva only having 8 touches in this game, however. ... Gideon says the win over Eagle Crest solidified Chatfield in my mind. I really like Coach Rossholt, and I don't know how he does it every year. I do. He's just a good coach. So there you go there. Gino says this, getting that win over Eagle Crest shows that the Chargers are once again a threat this season. And then Phoenix says, stays undefeated after going to battle with Eagle Crest. I have Chatfield at 5 right now. I really like the roster. I think their quarterback, Cash, has played really good football. We knew what he would be, and I do think he's living up to expectations. A little bit of a slow start in this game, though, but he figured it out as the game went on, and I think that's big time. Also got them the win there, and is your 5A Playmaker of the week. So I like where Chatfield is. The Brock Narva touches are concerning, considering his injury history, but we'll just ignore that for now. Now at 5 is Valor Christian, who just stays right here. Cody said, love to see our Colorado fellas go out of state and take care of business against a decent-looking Utah squad and passing more than they ran to do it, albeit a very balanced offensive approach. Gideon says this about Valor here. He says, went to Salt Lake City and put on a show. This league is going to be tough, but I like this team for a bye week. Agreed there. Gino said, Valor is definitely a top 5 team to start the year. This is a team with very few weak spots. And then Phoenix says, went to Salt Lake City and came away with a 2-score win. Yeah, I mean, I don't want to say in an era, but in a season where 5A teams have kind of struggled at times against out-of-state opponents and haven't put on the best showing, a win against an out-of-state opponent is huge, especially one right next to us. So, love that for us. I will say this. I'm going to admit it. I had some worries about the quarterback situation with Dawson Olk, but he has seemingly done a solid job so far. Valor is definitely a team we're going to need to get eyes on here soon. Want to get eyes on soon. So there you go. But they stay right here at 5 to start our top 5. At 4 still is Denver East here. Cody said, time to put up or shut up for the Angels that will play a pretty peeved Eagle Crest squad to prove themselves. Gideon says 1, but it was against Sand Creek, which does not move me, and actually that was the week before they played Liberty, who is worse. Gino said the Angels get their first test of the year next week against Eagle Crest, and Phoenix said able to get a shutout win by 7 touchdowns on the road. So yeah, you could kind of see where the whole podcast is as far as Denver East goes. This matchup against Eagle Crest is going to be huge, I think. That's a good team over there. They got a quarterback. They got a nice running back. Some really good defensive players. If they could beat him, that is definitely, a little bit of a confidence booster, vote of confidence in them moving forward here. We know how much talent they have there. It's time to put it together. Now at 3 is Mountain Vista, who stays right here at 3 here. Cody said proper win. Gideon says the most dominant team in state play outside of Creek. Gino has them at 1 still. He said the Golden Eagles are living up to the hype so far after that shutout over Cherokee Trail. And then Phoenix said this about Mountain Vista, good shutout win against Cherokee Trail on the road. So yeah, they continue to roll here. Not much more to say. It's really on the teams ahead of them at this point. And there's only 2. Now at 2 is Columbine, who does drop a spot. I'm just gonna throw this out there because I know what some people are thinking. We only had 2 people drop them. The rest of us, the majority of us, did not. They're still in the same spot. I have them at 2. Cody still has them at 1. He didn't say anything. Gideon has them at 3 now. He said, looks surprisingly mortal against Foster Ridge. Gino has them at 3 now as well. He said 14-point win over a sneaky Foster Ridge team to stay undefeated. Keeps the Rebels in my top 3. And then Phoenix has them at 1. Still undefeated after a good 2-score win over Fossil Ridge. That Fossil Ridge game, and I'm not one, y'all know this, I'm not one to defend Columbine like that, but that was not as close as that game looked. So I'm not tripping. But for me personally, they were still at 2. Now at 1 now is Cherry Creek again after this dominant win over Regis. Cody said this about Creek: I'm just looking forward to this Texas game, TBH. That's against Highland Park in Dallas. I'll talk about that more later. Gideon said may have just shut the door on Regis' chance at a playoff spot. This is the type of win that destroys the season. I don't think that shuts the door on Regis because of RPI. Strength of schedule matters more than winning at times. So there you go. Gino has, that was Gideon by the way, and then Gino has Creek at 2. He said no one has looked more dominant over the last 2 weeks than Cherry Creek and Mountain Vista. Agreed there. Phoenix says blew Regis out of the water in their win. Now, Cherry Creek, I mean, they're going to beat Regis. We kind of knew that. Going into that game, I was talking to our guys, and I was like, I'm not going to lie, I don't think this is going to be a close game at halftime, and it wasn't. They took care of business. They looked battle-hardened, like I thought they would, and they did a good job. Offensively, I will say some things didn't run the ball as efficiently as I thought they could. A lot of their runs were scrambles by Brady Vodka, which isn't bad, but also part of it is just Regis Jesuit not playing great contained, so there's that as well. Passing-wise, it could have been a little bit better. And I'm nitpicking, but it's for a reason, because they're going to go to Dallas. They're going to play Highland Park. I know Highland Park very well, being from Dallas. If in case you don't know who they are, that's a school that Matthew Stafford goes to, and that's a school that gets like millions from their boosters. So you can only imagine what kind of talent they have there. And that's all I'm going to say there. But Highland Park is talented. I thought last year in the Texas State football playoffs, they were very underrated going into it. They made some noise. They beat some good teams. And this year, I think they're going to be solid again. By Texas standards. By Colorado standards, this is a whole new ballpark. I'm going to say this is the toughest team that they will ever play this season. I don't think they play a more talented team than this one this season, and that does include playoffs. If they were to play any other team here, like Mountain Vista, Columbine, East, Valor, I don't think they would be more talented than Highland Park. That's going to make me sound like a traitor. I realize that, but y'all don't realize how good this team is all I'm going to say there. I'm sending a couple people that I know, obviously. Well, maybe not obviously, but former teammates over there to watch that game, evaluate some players, how they do against Texas talent. But it gets real this weekend. It gets real this Friday, is all I'm going to say. This is Friday Night Lights. So we'll see what happens there. But I'm just going to say this. This is going to sound super unpopular, but this is my personal opinion. I'm not dropping Creek if they lose to Highland Park. So there you go. But that is your top 10 rankings for 5A. Once more, just outside Arvada West and Legend. 10 Fairview, 9 Ralston Valley, 8 Eagle Crest, 7 Castleview, 6 Chatfield, 5 Valor Christian, 4 Denver East, 3 Mountain Vista, 2 Columbine, and at number 1 is Cherry Creek. So there you go there. That is your power rankings for week 3 of the 2024 Colorado High School football season. Once again, brought to you by Junkyard Training. Remember, they're located at 14697 Easter Avenue in Centennial, Colorado. That's Sweet E. They offer speed training, youth sports training, weightlifting, rehab, and recovery. That includes cryotherapy, cupping, recovery boots, and more. Make sure you visit today or call 303-521-7594. One more time, that's 303-521-7594.
And where did that lead you? Back to me, your showrunner here, Cody Stoffer, with the very last segment of the day. If you've been here, you already know what it is. It's Playmakers of the Week, where we go through a ton of nominees from every single classification as chosen by the people doing the recap. So Gino for 1A, myself for 2A, and then you got Phoenix for 3A, Gideon for 4A, and Coach V for 5A. So a lot of different opinions as we continue to rotate through these recaps. Be sure to listen back through all of the recaps here so that you know what's going on in every single classification of football, and be sure to listen to the in-game recaps as well to get actions on the games that we were able to attend live in person this week. And these Playmakers of the Week are brought to you by Code Red Coaching, where the grind to greatness starts with the mind. Are you a player or a team who's looking to get over that hump and be mentally strong and build that fortitude, well, Code Red Coaching and Cody Rosenthal are the resource for you. Be sure to visit coderedcoaching.com or email rosecj.6599@gmail.com so that way you could be a mental performer and a beast like these fellas up next here this week on Playmaker of the Week here. I'm going to just go ahead and go down the line here, talking about the nominees from every single classification, and then I'm going to announce the winners in reverse order. So let's start with some nominees on the 5A classification here from Coach V, where he had a couple of choices here. The first one being the sophomore quarterback from Chatfield High School, Cash Williams, who went 11 of 21 for 160 yards, 2 touchdowns to 1 pick, as well as 31 rushing yards and 1 touchdown. And this was in a win over Eagle Crest that he got this nomination here. You also got Roman Saiz here, a senior wide receiver from Douglas County, in a win versus Rock Canyon. 6 receptions, 230 yards, and 2 receiving touchdowns. Y'all already know where my biased wide receiver vote would go here. And then the last nominee here being Cash Spence, the junior athlete from Valor Christian here, who had 8 receptions for 82 receiving yards and a touchdown, as well as 4 carries for 21 yards and a rushing touchdown, while also forcing a fumble on defense in Valor Christian's road win over a Utah squad, East High School. Going through the 4A nominees, we got some from Gideon here. Sam Hawker from Cheyenne Mountain, 39 pass yards, passing touchdown, 93 rush yards, 2 rushing touchdowns, 4 tackles, 1 fumble recovery, 485 kickoff yards, an 80.8 kickoff average, 153 punt yards, and a 50.1 yard average, as well as going 3 of 4 from PAT, 1 of 2 in field goals in a 30-14 win over Coronado. Sam Hawker, once again, being from Cheyenne Mountain. Rhett Armstrong, another special teamer here, who kicked the 3rd longest field goal in Colorado history at 62 yards, along with a 51-yard field goal and an 82-yard kickoff average against Lewis Palmer. And then Landon Kalsbeck, the athlete from Dakota Ridge, 4 sacks, 10 tackles, 5 TFLs, 183 rushing yards, 2 rushing touchdowns in a win over Mesa Ridge. 3A nominees here. Go ahead and listen back to Phoenix's full recap as he does, kind of allude to it there at the end of his segment. And his nominees are Garrett Hendrickson of Thompson Valley, 19 carries, 118 yards, and 2 scores in the game that he actually attended. So also listen to that recap to listen to Hendrickson's name make plays consistently through that recap. Trip Thomas of Windsor, 6 carries, 105 yards, and 4 rushing touchdowns. And then Tyson Maris-Benz here from Mountain View, 8 receptions, 64 yards, 3 touchdowns, as well as 7 tackles on defense. For myself here, I have a few nominees, starting off with Will Daniel from Basalt, 124 yards, 3 scores, and 21 total tackles. You also have Woodlands quarterback Marquez Joseph Schoenberger here, throwing a touchdown and running for 248 total yards in a win over CSCS. For Salida here, representing his case in Pridemore, 125 rushing yards, 10 tackles, a forced fumble, and a fumble recovery on defense. And Andrew Brown, 200 yards, 91 rushing yards, a throwing touchdown, and 3 rushing scores over Elizabeth there. And last but not least here, we got the 1A classification with Jacob Pacheco of Monte Vista, 194 yards, 2 touchdowns on 17 carries, 5 tackles, and a pick in a win over North Fork. There was also another Monte Vista Pirate here, 13 tackles, 2 picks, a TFL, 2 receptions, 45 yards, and a touchdown for Isaiah Hurtado here. Moving over to Forge Christian, Uli Tafoya here, 126 yards, 2 touchdowns on 12 carries, a 10-yard touchdown reception, and 2 sacks in a blowout win over Devlin. You also got Machown Puga. Sorry if I just butchered that. For Prospect Ridge, 102 yards, 3 touchdowns on 16 carries, and 5 sacks in their first win since 2022 for Prospect Ridge. And then a nominee here in Casey Midcap for Ray, 16 of 22 for 216 yards, 2 TDs, 87 yards, touchdown on 15 carries, 11 tackles, a pick, TFL, and a 96-yard kickoff return over Scott High School. That is across state lines. And now let's go ahead and start announcing the winners of all of these nominations here. Gino V. Hill selecting Casey Midcap as the 1A Playmaker of the Week. He just talked about being able to impact every single facet of this game. I mean, throwing 2 touchdowns, rushing for another, having over 300 scrimmage yards as far as being an offensive threat, basically getting over 400 yards with the kickoff return for a touchdown over Scott, as well as 11 tackles, an interception, and a TFL on defense. I mean, Scott is a school that Ray has had a hard time getting over the hump with, and Casey Midcap did everything and some to ensure that that was not going to be the case this year. For myself here, I was going back and forth a little bit here. I thought that I had some pretty good ones here, but ultimately I landed on Andrew Brown. Elizabeth was a top 10 team for us in the 2A power rankings here. I think that they still are. Go ahead and listen back to the power rankings segment. And Andrew Brown just did not seem to be fazed by this Elizabeth squad, going for almost 300 total yards and 4 touchdowns against a really good defense that has playmakers at different spots. And I think that TCA is not where they are without Andrew Brown, and that includes the win this week as I crown him as my 2A Playmaker of the Week. For Phoenix here, he is going to crown Trip Thomas of Windsor as the Playmaker of the Week. Brush up on these stats: 6 carries, 105 yards, and 4 touchdowns. Playmaker of the Week for Week 3 based on the dominant performance, scoring about half of the team's points in their shutout victory. Yeah, he was carrying both of the football and of the scoring load. I mean, bro was scoring more than half the times he touched the ball. That makes for a good night. On the 4A level here, Gideon is going to go with Landon Kalsbeck here, stating, quote, huge performance, insane stats, and a great win over a solid program. Dakota Ridge strikes fear in my heart now, and Kalsbeck is a huge reason why, end quote. And just as a reminder for the damage that Kalsbeck did over former number 1 for PMC Power Rankings, that is Mesa Ridge, he notched 4 sacks, 5 TFLs, and 10 tackles just on defense, holding this explosive offense that just scored 50 points to under 3 touchdowns this past week, as well as grinding out on the ground 183 rushing yards and 2 rushing touchdowns in this 1-score win for Dakota Ridge. I think this is a great Playmaker of the Week selection for the 4A level, Landon Kalsbeck of Dakota Ridge. And last but not least here, 5A, Coach V is going to crown the sophomore quarterback, Cash Williams here, putting, quote, he would score almost all in the second half to bring Chatfield back and beat Eagle Crest. This includes the game-winning QB sneak to give them the win very late in the fourth quarter, end quote. Cash Williams, once again, 11 of 21, 160 yards, 2 touchdowns, a pick, 31 rushing yards, and a rushing touchdown here in a 23-16 win over Eagle Crest. This was a huge win for Chatfield. In RPI, I think that this actually shot them up to number 1, and I know that it bumped them up in my personal power rankings for Chatfield. So, once again, the Playmakers of the Week brought to you by Code Red Coaching. Remember to email rosecj.6599@gmail.com. That's rosecj.6599@gmail.com. Or visit coderedcoaching.com to contact Cody Rosenthal so that way your players or your squad can begin the grind to greatness that starts with the mind and become mentally sharp and acute in the realm of sport and physical performance, like these Playmakers of the Week being Casey Midcap of Ray High School, Andrew Brown of the Classical Academy, Trip Thomas of Windsor High School, Landon Kalsbeck of Dakota Ridge, and Cash Williams of Chatfield High School are Week 3 Playmakers of the Week from Code Red Coaching. And that is going to do it from us here at the Playmakers Corner podcast. Be sure to listen back through for all of our different hosts and all the work that they put in, 1A through 5A, attending live games, giving feedback, score recaps, stat rundowns, as well as our Playmakers of the Week and our power rankings that we put a lot of time into. We are so happy to have covered 400 episodes. This is a huge milestone from us. And on behalf of everyone on the podcast here, whether that's people that you heard today, Phoenix, Gideon, Gino, Coach V, myself, or Mason, who's been with us through the years as well and is back doing his thing on middle school ball. We're excited to have him back and to get his feedback and his help. He helped out with interview time on the Creek game, so we're glad to have him back as well as his contributions in the past. Whether that's been guests that we've had for interviews, we've had so many of those. Whether that has been coaches that we've been talking to, sources that we have across the state that keep us in the loop on so many things, our sponsors that we've been so fortunate to have over the past few years, especially Code Red Coaching and Junkyard Training, who are still with us now. Whether that is people who've been featured on culture episodes, whether that was people who were involved from the old days, as in the Cycle 365. Shout out Jesse Booten, shout out Liam Hughes, and just shout out to all of the support that we have had over this time as Playmakers Corner podcast. This has been a very fun journey, and yet it still feels like we are just getting started here. But 400 episodes in, I can smile thinking back about all of the good times and all the memories, all the games we've attended, and all of just the love that has been shared with us from all of the communities and listeners like you that make this all possible. Thank you all so much for staying tuned and for continuing to stay tuned by making sure that you have notifications turned on and you are following or subscribing to us wherever you listen to podcasts, whether that be Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Brinker, whether that's on YouTube, if you're subscribed on there where we upload all of our episodes. And be sure to keep up with all of our content and episode announcements, as well as graphics, highlights, and everything via social media, whether that's at Playmakers Corner on TikTok, at Playmakers Corner on Instagram, at Playmaker Corner on Twitter, or Playmakers Corner on Facebook. We try and keep everything updated. Thank you all so much once again for the support, and I have been your showrunner for this episode, Cody Stauffer, signing off for the 400th time.